just slightly.
Likewise. Yeah, it's cold out. It's time to get wool out again.
Yeah.
It's never time to put sweaters away.
Briefly, I know, it was so nice earlier today.
Yeah.
It's like false hope.
I've been,
Thank you.
this is my favorite bathroom reading.
Yeah.
I went down to legislature again yesterday. It's always interesting to see what's going on inside the room,
Yeah?
the Capitol. It's interesting also to there's a what they call Mrs. Brown's attic or something like that at the very top of the Capitol. So where there's over each of the halls there's that big stained glass thing like they have at the Boulder Auto, and you're up actually above that and then below the dome.
Oh.
But it's got a lot of the sordid things that have happened there over the years.
Yeah.
With a picture of John Denver at the end of the hall.
That's a piece of Colorado history. For
Yeah.
sure. Willie and John, I think both are the two, I would say, more well-renowned faces that are associated.
I don't know if Ron got back to you, but he's got a room over at the Hop Inn
Oh, really?
that fits your needs, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
I will check.
it's available now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I might need it if I ever get thrown out. I guess I got a garage I can go.
You've got That's someday the hope here as well.
Yeah.
But the commercial is really appealing to your.
Hey everyone.
Still, it's specific time.
Mhm. What,
Okay.
the light commercial?
Welcome everyone to the May 2nd BOT meeting.
To be continued.
Let's see. It's time is now 7:01 and we will go ahead and call this to order. Macy?
All right, Mayor Billy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol,
Here.
Trustee Corvalon. Here. Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Here.
Trustee Mountain,
Here.
Trustee Severs,
Here, online.
and Trustee Sterling.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Appreciate it. So first of all, we have a consent agenda and there are let me see, four
Items.
items on it. Any questions or?
Let's not overlook
Comment?
Professional Clerks Week. Thank you, Macy, for everything you
Yes.
do. Having looked at your job description, you forgot some things. You've learned a lot in the time you've been here. Thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Macy. Any other questions or any motions here for the consent agenda?
I motioned to approve the consent agenda, 3.1 through 3.4.
Second.
Macy?
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Trustee Mountain.
Yes.
Thank you.
So now we'll have public comment on non-agenda items. So anyone out there, if you have any public comments on non-agenda items, now is your time to speak. Either raise your hand out there. No one's in the room, so either raise your hand out there or just start speaking. Any hands raised, Macy?
I don't see any.
Okay, so I don't see any hands raised there, so we'll go ahead and move right into our action item for the night. Our action item is a meter code change, and Andrew Bliss will be walking us through the aim.
You on, Andrew?
No, it's Miranda, and I
Okay.
think Andrew's
Okay.
there. Hi. Hello. I can't see that side of the room when I'm virtual, so I wasn't sure if he was there. I'm happy to present this actually. So at the last meeting, Andrew Bliss, Utilities Supervisor, presented to the Board of Trustees about the desire to incorporate the cost of replacing water meters and their associated remote reading devices into town's operating budget. There was full support from the Board of Trustees to direct Attorney Madsen to help draft the ordinance that is before you. And tonight we're looking for you to approve it. Just some logistical things. What will happen from here is, of course, we will need the 30 days from publication for that to take effect. And then we will go back and credit any water account, water or wastewater account that had a meter replaced in 2022 or 2023. And so all users would see that show up on their next bill. And that would either be June bills for commercial or Q2 bills for residential.
It looked like the net impact was around 15 grand.
Correct.
Okay.
And then we will absorb that into our current operating budget for utilities, and then we'll budget accordingly in all future years.
Okay. What's the net cost of those meters and how fast do we depreciate them?
So the meters cost approximately $100. The readers themselves also cost about $110. They're set to last about 10 years. That's the life cycle of them, which is why we're seeing so many of them fail right now, because the last time most of them were replaced was in 2013.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know they had them back then. And do we have enough I presume we're keeping plenty in stock with the newest technology to replace them.
Yeah, we are, and we can do approximately 10 a month. So what's happening is that we have meter replacement days where operators go out and they do multiple meters in a day versus trying to just handle them on an as needed basis. And so our intention is to try to replace at least 60 to 70 before the year is out.
Good. Now that you've overseen the billing part of it, do you think that are you getting challenges, or do you think they're coming out largely accurate? Do you trust the meters?
Yeah, they're coming out pretty accurate. If we see a major change once we install a new meter, we can do a credit back, but we're not seeing the need to do so. The estimates typically are pulling from when the meter was working, and then we've just been estimating off of that usage. So if your meter failed 3 years ago, we're operating on the usage from back when your meter was accurate. So typically someone's water usage doesn't change dramatically unless, of course, there's more people in the household or it is a new household that's come in. But in that case, we're basically starting over anyways.
Okay. And then this action item, so
there's
Any other clarifying questions out there? Tanya, Jesse?
No.
If not, we'll go ahead and move to public comment on the water meter code change.
this could be a fast meeting, Billy.
Maybe no need to charge my laptop after. Seeing no hands out there, let's bring it back for final discussion and motion.
I move to approve ordinance 842, amending sections 13-57 and 13-58 of the Nederland Municipal Code, and to direct staff to credit property owners charged for the replacement of a meter and/or reading device in 2023 and 2022.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Macy, does anyone wish to discuss?
I have a
Questions or-
comment.
Sure.
10 years ago or so, I was curious to know if, since our water meters are digital, and I believe that those, the meter readings are able to be transmitted wirelessly to the town.
oil or whatever.
Quick, Macy, can you make me host so I can control this on my end? Staff. I can't mute that. Okay.
Just one sec, Jesse. We just gotta mute someone and we'll get you.
I was just wondering, I was asking Alicia Reese at the time, she was town manager, what would be the feasibility of having it to where people could, because I know that town hall gets alerts if people's water meter goes up abnormally to signify that there's a leak, and that there's relatively real-time data that is collected by town hall. And I was wondering what the feasibility of making that information available to the users, to the end user, would be like. And it's not, this is off topic, it's not really what we're talking about, but I'd be curious to hear some additional insight into the feasibility of something like that, so that people could have a little bit more of a real-time relationship over their water consumption, and therefore potentially affect or have a more conscientious relationship with their water consumption and their water bill.
So it's my understanding that Stealth Zenner, which is the current system we have for meter reading, doesn't have that capacity. Unfortunately, we're also struggling with some issues with their system right now, so I can't confirm. However, Andrew Bliss is aware of an app that the town could look into. It does come at a cost, and I don't know that cost, so we can bring that back to you. That would allow people to interface with their meters, and they would get those alerts. It would be a supplemental system because we don't believe Stealth can do that for us, but we're happy to bring that back. If there's another trustee who wants to second that discussion, we can definitely provide more information.
Second that.
Great.
Billy.
So it definitely is doable, Trustee Severs. I think we just have to figure out, you know, is it possible to integrate with Stealth, or maybe we just need to move all together. The meters are Zenner meters, which is why we use that system. And I'm not sure we can necessarily abandon that, but we may be able to have the kind of the supplemental service.
Cool. Yeah, I know our high water bills are a pretty common pain point for Netherlands citizens, and I think just having a more transparent relationship with our water consumption, and therefore our water bill, could be something that the public could really benefit from. I'd love to see
and
more.
one thing I can say is, you know, if anyone is interested, I know it's a little clunky, but because we have Janet, who is our new billing specialist, someone could email asking for their consumption over the last month or the last year, and we can easily pull that report and email it to them. It turns into either a PDF or an Excel document, and they can see what their usage is by hour. And that's how we also find out if you have a leak. If you get 24-hour water running through your meter, we're going to get a notification that you have that, and we'll reach out to you to let you know that there is something wrong with you may have a toilet running or something else might be going on, so that the user can have a plumber come out or take a look at this situation themselves.
Thanks, Miranda. Thanks, Jesse. Any other discussion on this motion? If not, Macy? Actually, I'll just what do you call it? Repeat. The motion is to approve ordinance 842, amending sections 1357 and 1358 of the Netherlands Municipal Code, and to direct staff to credit property owners charged for the replacement of a meter and or reading device in 2023 and 2022. Is that correct? Okay. Backwards. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Macy.
Trustee Mountain,
Yes.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol,
Yes.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And from that, we'll go into our discussion items for the night. We have 3 discussion items. The first one is on the watershed ordinance map. And I believe Miranda and Jennifer will be.
I'll get this started and I'll kick it over to Attorney Madsen to add on to what I share here. So before you tonight is the Watershed Protection Ordinance. And this ordinance, just some context, the Board of Trustees back in July 2022, which I know is before a lot of you were on the board, had talked a bit about maybe the desire of having a watershed protection ordinance. And some of that conversation really came out of the violation that CDPHE had issued to the Cross Gold Mine. And while that Cross and Caribou Mine is not in the town's watershed, there was really kind of conversation about, well, what if something were to happen upstream of our intake site? And would we want the ability to regulate any permitting related to those activities? So the board at the time directed staff to go work with Ashley to create a watershed or a watershed map, which is before you in the packet. But that's kind of really just step one. Step two is to figure out what types of activities would we want to regulate. So there's kind of a list in this AIM that gives you an idea of what we might regulate. And really we're looking at what kind of activities could cause any sort of damage to our watershed and our water supply. There's some examples that Attorney Madsen provided from Victor and Crested Butte to give you an idea. We are aware that the city of Boulder is also working on a watershed protection ordinance, and that Boulder County, of course, has their own zoning and land use regulations. But really the reason I think this comes before you is, does Nederland want to have its own authority in saying what types of activities could happen, or putting potential regulations on a permit for any work that might be done above our watershed intake site? So Attorney Madsen, anything else from you?
Yes, so just briefly, the town has this authority to implement a watershed protection district and an ordinance that protects this district. And this is really kind of unusual for a municipality, because what you're really doing is, with this ordinance, you would be expanding your jurisdiction outside the town boundaries. And for certain activities that you would identify in your ordinance, you would be asking people to come to the town for a review. And before you can conduct that activity, either it will need to be accepted out for some reason, or you would need to obtain a permit to conduct that activity. And this is the watershed protection district is allowed by state law. There are several municipalities that have implemented a watershed protection district. The examples that you were given tonight are Crested Butte and Victor. And the two of those municipalities kind of handle this in a little bit of a different way. Crested Butte says that if you are engaged in development within that water protection district, you must either obtain a certificate of exemption, which is, there's criteria for being exempt from the watershed permit requirement, a finding of no significant impact, or you must obtain a permit. And in Crested Butte, they have the term development is defined. And development means any excavation, filling, grading, surfacing, construction, or other activity, or other land preparation for agricultural use and non-commercial gardening or landscaping that changes a basic character or increases the intensity of use or water. So that's what Crested Butte is regulating. And what they have done then is created exemptions for the permit. Whereas in Victor has defined activities that then would fit within that requirement to obtain a permit. So you'd have to
identify who needs to get a permit, what type of activities, if it's development or what, and then work through an ordinance that outlines the process for issuing permits and who is exempt.
Got it.
Any more clarifying questions for?
Yeah, I have
Got it.
one.
Oh, go ahead, you first, Tanya.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Have you cross-referenced what Boulder County requires for watershed? Someone had written a letter saying that Boulder County already has watershed requirements in place and we don't need to double up on them. And so
So-
that I'm curious as to, does Boulder County have watershed requirements and limitations and permits?
I spent a little bit of time looking at that today. I haven't spent a lot of time. I don't believe that Boulder County has any watershed permit requirements. However, I don't know if, in their other application processes, if what they are, the application requirements or permit requirements for other land development permits, if those include steps that the town could ask people to take related to water protection. And what's in both ordinances are, well, for example, in Crested Butte, the review then requires best management practices for when you're conducting an activity, you agree to perform that activity under best management practices so that you minimize the impacts to the watershed. So the short answer is I don't know if Boulder County has those requirements, and for what I researched today, could not find that Boulder County has anything in place.
Okay, because I wouldn't want to be charging fees and twice on somebody if they're already paying Boulder County for something. The other, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just one other thing is that what this also does is it gives Nederland a seat at the table or an opportunity to regulate these issues. So maybe Boulder County does have regulations in place, but as a regulatory body, discretion is always can always be a factor. And perhaps even if they had those requirements in place for some reason or another, Boulder County may decide on a particular property that they don't want to impose the requirements. So you would be in a position to say, well, wait a minute, we do think our water quality is important, and we want to require a permit for this person.
Would this be something that would have to go through then the planning commission, or would it just be an administrative action?
That's what you would decide. You
Because
could
I
decide this.
do, I read that one letter we received, and he makes a lot of points about our bandwidth as a community and a town for taking on more when we were already kind of struggling with what we got. But I'm also curious as to how is it that we can spread our boundaries all the way to Eldora? That's just because, obviously water flows downhill. So is that just customary for how it works? It's a certain amount of miles that you go from the town limits? Is that
It's in the state statute that
the
allows
state
you to go
statute.
from 5 miles from where the water is taken.
I'm certainly not personally opposed to this. I just don't know how much we want to, seems like a huge kind of ordinance process that we'd have to create when we can't even seem to get our zoning thing even started. So I don't even know if we have the bandwidth for this, but I'd love to hear from other trustees.
I'll go next then, Tanya. I think nothing will cripple us faster than having bad water. And so this is one of those things where it's not necessarily urgent, but I think it's ultra important that we protect that. And so I think I would put this pretty high up on the priority list. One of the things I'm curious about, and this is back to Attorney Madsen, is they say it's 5 miles from the origin, right? And then it's is it 3 miles around the water? Or how do the words work? Because
So
it's a very
it was
strange.
actually, it's in your aim. It's the
Right.
statutes that's cited in the aim 3115-707. And what it says is that you have, as a municipality, you have the power to construct or authorize the construction of such waterworks
Mhm.
without their limits, and for the purpose of maintaining and protecting the same from injury and the water from pollution, the jurisdiction shall extend over the territory occupied by such works and all reservoirs, streams, trenches, pipes, and drains used in and necessary for construction, maintenance, and operation of the same, and over the stream and sources from which the water is taken for 5 miles above the point from which water is taken.
Okay.
So yeah, essentially 5 miles above, and then the watershed extends out beyond that 5 miles.
And I noticed on the map, we drop into Gilpin County. Is that going to cause an issue?
I've already spoken with Gilpin County and Boulder County. They both are aware, but didn't feel like they could really weigh in until we knew what activities we wanted to regulate.
Okay.
And that would determine a lot of their feedback. So they're kind of eagerly awaiting what may come out of this conversation or future ones of what our preliminary lists might look like.
Okay. And is the town of Eldora completely inside?
Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be Boulder County unincorporated, of course. There could be conversations with the ECA, but Eldora doesn't have its own governing body. They just
Right.
have the civic associations.
Okay. Yeah, in the interest of keeping the peace with Eldora, I'll meet with Dave next week and go through his concerns. He generally has the pulse of Eldora, it seems.
Well, I would be mindful that I don't believe Dave is on the ECA, and so there,
Oh.
if you're interested, there may be a desire to meet with the official association of Eldora.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think since it goes completely around their town, I think it's only decent to have a conversation.
Yeah, I think when he talked about us, kind of having some kind of, conversation or town hall or whatever we want to call it, some kind of meeting in Eldora, I mean, that definitely caught my attention as a possibility. I'm sure it would be exciting, but at the same time, it would be also, they're really the main target. The ski area in Eldora are the main population base.
They're affected. It seems to, that seems to be reasonable. I just, it seems like we'd have to, before we do that, we'd have to decide what we want, which model we want. And to me, I like what they did in Crested Butte.
Yeah, me too.
But we should have that decided ourselves before we even start to talk about what ifs with the people who are inside the circle.
Did Crested Butte have to compete with, like, I don't know what county they're in, their county, Gunnison, and downstream? Downstream municipalities in the county as well? Was it the same kind of potential redundancy of jurisdiction?
I had a conversation with the attorney from Crested Butte, and it was, to be honest, it was a while ago. I mean, probably was a year ago that I had that conversation. So my memory isn't great on it. I do know that their ordinance was really put in place because of mining operations. And I know that that is a municipality that has used it. To be honest, I don't think that Victor has ever used their ordinance. Nobody has ever obtained a watershed permit, to my knowledge, in Victor.
Jennifer, do they have anything about livestock in Crested Butte on theirs? I didn't see it, but they have such an issue there with BLM and cows and whatnot. And not that I see it as a real possibility in Nederland, but I would like to add something on our list of things to be considered would be livestock. And I guess we'd have to define what that would mean. It's not just one horse. It would be, I have seen what they do to small rivers like our creek when they are muddy it up and whatnot. And so I would like, that's just my opinion on something we should add, even though I don't necessarily see it as a real threat, but just if we're going to all this trouble.
I do believe that the definition of development, and I'm going back up, scrolling up
thank
to
you.
it, and I think it does include, it would include a livestock.
Yeah,
Um,
I do like the Crested Butte. I like that they have the exemptions for things that already are in place so that you don't have to, if you're just fixing something, you don't have to get a permit and whatnot.
As you know, just hearkening back to the rights of nature and all that. Did is the water attorney Aaron Ladd okay with this whole plan?
Did run it by the water attorney, and he was kind of supportive of this from the start. I did hear from Denatale Water today, two water rights engineers, and they also support crested buttes as maybe one town should model, but did kind of wonder, similar to Trustee Corvalon, like where is the Boulder County, and maybe just understanding those regulations, which Attorney Madsen, we've kind of already assessed that's something we're interested in doing. They did caution, of course, the administrative burden on town staff and just really making sure that whatever town is requiring a permit for is something that is significant in terms of the impact it has on our water supply. You may not want to have someone who's just replacing a line to their well for their home have to pull a permit or paving their driveway, but we're talking like large scale operations.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
So Crested Butte would be dealing with a ski area. That to me seems like the biggest potential polluter. Um, if, did you remember any conversations about the ski area?
it was really focused on the mining operations.
Well, that makes sense.
Denatale Water did note, though, in their email that, of course, Eldora ski area is within this boundary, and they might be one that could impact our water supply. So I'm really just kind of noting that the town of Eldora itself and Eldora ski area might be the two major areas, since the kind of the pulling from north and south, there's not a lot happening in those areas.
Right. Yeah. So I was, I kind of see the ski area as the likely most, well, just that has the kind of operations that could have the most impact, because I don't think there's too much mining going on up there. I could be wrong, but I was just curious if I kind of forgot Crested Butte was dealing with the mining as well. Oh, Jesse, you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks. Well, it's more of a comment, not necessarily a clarifying question. I don't know if you want to circle back.
Oh, okay. Any more clarifying questions? Yeah, thanks. If not, we'll go to public comment on the watershed protection ordinance, 3 minutes. And if you want to give a comment, just start talking or raise your hand. I just see 2 trustees' hands up so far. So hearing no public comments, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for discussion. So Jesse, why don't you go first?
Yeah, thanks. So with all this stuff, I think this is really, really great for us to kind of expand our awareness and our area of concern, so to speak, to include our watershed, as Tom mentioned. Water is extremely important. The only thing that on this list of the items here that I do excavation, and I do excavation in the town of Ned as well as in the county. And all of these things are really addressed in the county already, and I'm not in favor of adding more work scope to our town staff to duplicate efforts with the county. There are maybe 1 or 2 things on here that are not sufficiently covered by the county, in my opinion. But I'd want to look into that a little bit more. I think the biggest one that I feel is our biggest threat to our, well, there's two items. One is a fire, and having the fallout of the ash that could potentially be throughout the watershed and then contaminate our water supply. So, fire mitigation, I think, would be something that we could potentially require, although Boulder County already does that for new development. So that is potentially a duplication. And then the other one is septics. Boulder County is quite active with ensuring that septic systems are up to date, and they are, for the past several years now, every time a property is bought or sold, it requires an inspection from a qualified licensed inspector. And then if that septic system is found to have any deficiencies, it's required, and it's contingent upon the sale, that septic system be brought up to date. Boulder County has been essentially talking about and threatening to be more proactive in that regard, to not only target systems that are in a buy-sell transaction moment, but also just any system that is potentially outdated or doesn't have a permit. If there's a house without a septic permit, that house would also be targeted, and they would seek to ensure that system was brought up to date. I know that the town of Eldora has a lot of septic systems that are essentially in the groundwater, which is not providing adequate treatment. And so if there's anything in this list that I feel that is something that we could work potentially as in an IGA with Boulder County, it would be around this notion of being more proactive with seeking out and targeting systems that are potentially derelict or defunct septic systems in our watershed that could be contaminating our water supply. Because I've talked to the Boulder County Health Department, and I know that they are also stretched thin with their staff, and they just don't have the bandwidth to be very proactive with that. And so, that's potentially something that we could work with the Boulder County Commissioners on in our upcoming discussion. And I would really want to, so aside from the fire mitigation, I don't feel that there's a whole lot of threat to our watershed right now. I feel like it's being fairly well managed by Boulder County. And I would want to hear from Andrew Bliss if there are any contaminants from pesticides or from, coliform from the septic systems, for example, or anything that he's aware of. I imagine we're doing periodic testing, and we would have some data that we could draw on from how our watershed is being managed. With all of that said, that kind of talks about outside of town. And then I think that it's also a real consideration. We're actually doing a lot less, in my opinion, inside the town of Ned than Boulder County is doing in our outskirts around Ned in terms of our regulation and our building code. As an excavator, I feel like I have less regulation imposed upon me inside the town of Nederland than I do just outside in the county. And I would personally like to have more. That doesn't really benefit us and our watershed so much as it benefits the town of Boulder, the city of Boulder. And I would really like for us to find ways in which we could have some negotiating power at a negotiating table with the city of Boulder around widening the Weir Bridge, for example, or doing little things like the path along the reservoir and we could take on management of that. And I think there's some little things that we could offer Boulder City in exchange for some things that we would very much like to have from Boulder City, related to this very topic, such as managing the watershed. So those are my thoughts, really. This is a discussion item, and that's kind of where my head's at with it all. So that's all I have to say.
Bill, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can I ask something about what Jesse said?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, good. Yeah, on one hand, I heard you say it was, that there are some deficient septic tanks there, and we don't know if coliform is getting into our water. And on the other hand, I heard that Boulder County doesn't have the bandwidth to do their job in this end of the county. And at this the same time, I heard that they've got it under control. So it scares me to have leaky septic systems upstream from our in tank, and that unhappy thought makes me think, okay, that's something I'd love to be able to protect. At the same time, I'd ask you, Miranda, who has the expertise on your team to be doing this? If we get a call from somebody in Eldora that says, I want to make a modification to my septic system, what would we do? How would we do that?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. I would definitely say no one on our team currently has the capability, and I also couldn't comment on whether Dave and Direct Discharge do either. That's something we would definitely have to look into, or it would need to be a third party that's retained for these types of reviews.
Does Safe Build have that capability?
Yeah. Dan Wester potentially could in Safe Built. We'd have to probably kind of modify our agreement since this is different than building permits, but it is something they could potentially assess.
Yeah, we brought some. I think we're bringing up some good points. Tanya, you're about to say something.
Yeah, I just on your topic. I imagine that our water treatment plant tests water coming in on a regular basis, coming off the little ponds there. That pretty much comes straight from Eldora. Do we have a high septic residue in the water that we find on a regular basis or seasonally?
No.
Maybe more in the summer when more people are there. So it's not really a problem at the moment.
No, and I don't have of course, the numbers, but it is not an issue because that would be something, potentially based on the levels that we would have to report if we were having to do a significant treatment.
And our treatment plant covers that, right? Like we have the capability of cleaning that out and bringing the water clean. But if it was really high, it would be alarming and we'd have to use more chemicals and whatever the process is. Okay, well, that's good to know. And go ahead, Tom, if you had more questions. I had another question for what Jesse was talking about, but if you're, I don't want to know you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tanya.
So that is interesting that Nederland has less regulation on a excavator than Boulder County does. And also I have experience with uphill rivers where people have built homes along waters and didn't put the right plants by the water and creates a real muddy situation when it rains. So is that something that Boulder County is always checking with you, like as far as the watershed, Jesse? Is that one of the things that they're concerned about? Or I'm just curious, like where are they stronger than Ned?
Well, it's in that what Jennifer mentioned earlier, the best management practices, which has to do with erosion control, silt fencing, revegetation, grading and drainage. There's a whole bunch of site planning as well, something that has come up in meetings that I've been in with the BOT previously. There's just more documents and more engineering and more sort of construction site management that there's more regulation and oversight in the county than there is in Ned. Again, like I'm not saying that it's something that we're not the primary beneficiaries of stricter regulation in that regard necessarily. The city is, because we're really in the city of Boulder's watershed because our stormwater drains into Barker Reservoir, not into our collection area. So I think that we could really use that as leverage in negotiating with the city of Boulder and say, hey, look, we will update our regulation around managing our watershed inside the town. But you guys are going to be the primary beneficiaries, and we want something from you as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot, the leverage. I mean, as they say, we're all downstream, so we all want to do the best we can, regardless of whose water it is. What would you want? Do you have something in mind for in exchange of, like, is there something you have in mind yourself?
Well, yeah, I want recreating on Barker for a couple weeks out of the year. I want to manage the trail along
I
Barker
want that
Reservoir.
too.
I want to widen the Weir Bridge.
Yeah, they told me that's not them. I had an email from one of them that I'll forward to you later that it's the state. They passed the buck over. I was communicating with someone for a while about the Weir, but I like where you're thinking, and I don't know if this is the right place for this conversation, but I do like it a lot. I agree with you.
And, you know, Tom, back to your question around the septic systems up in Eldora. I didn't hear that we do have contaminants coming into our freshwater treatment plant. So it hasn't really been a concern of mine because I was paying attention to that when we did the tour when I first joined the BOT. Had I heard otherwise, this would be a lot more of a concern for me. If we wanted to be more proactive with getting the town of Eldora to have all of their septic systems up to a higher level of treatment, you know, a higher standard. The way we would regulate that is by requiring that the town have operation and maintenance agreements with licensed operation and maintenance providers, like what happens for advanced treatment systems in the county. So if I go and I put an advanced treatment system in Tanya's backyard because she lives on Big Springs, then she would have to, according to the county regulations, she would have to have an operations and maintenance contract for 3 years. And then she would, I believe, be required or maybe not be required to renew it after those 3 years. But I think she would be required to renew it after the 3 years. And so we would, and basically what that is she has to hire a septic pumper to come once every 2 years and pump out the system and do a checkup on it, make sure that it's all working properly. And so
Whoa! Where are you going here?
basically, I'm just saying
He's
how
explaining
we would
the county's
achieve,
process.
if we wanted to be proactive with kind of clamping down on Eldora's septic systems, because right now the Boulder County is doing a very good job of regulating and making sure that systems are brought up to current standards in the event of a real estate transaction. So that's their mechanism for enforcement of septic systems right now, and it's working quite well. The thing they haven't been able to achieve because of lack of bandwidth is to be more proactive than that and to go after systems that aren't necessarily in a real estate transaction. They're just systems that have kind of been quote unquote grandfathered in. So they haven't figured out how to be more proactive than just going for the real estate transaction systems. And I haven't heard any real plans from them. I checked in with them about a year ago and asked them if they were going to ever start doing that. And they said, we don't know yet. But if we were to say, hey, we want to start going after all the systems in our watershed and make sure that they're all current, we could then say all these systems are required to have a pump out and an inspection once every 3 years, which is generally recommended best practice for a septic system regardless, is to have the tank pumped every 2 to 3 years. And the pumpers are always the inspectors. They're the licensed inspectors for septic systems anyways, because you have to do a pump out for an inspection. So it just makes sense for the pumpers to be the inspectors. So that's how we would regulate it if we wanted to require the town of Eldora to keep their to upgrade all their systems, you know.
Well, can I make a quick comment here about that? With this watershed, to get back to this Watershed Act, do you really think that's the highest priority for the Watershed Act, since Miranda's saying that the water's not coming out highly polluted? And why do we want to put like a lot of burden on people right now over this?
I
when it's
agree.
not
I don't think we need to, and I
issue?
don't
I'm
think
not
it is a
really trying to-
priority.
I'm
I
more
think if
interested in,
anything,
like-
we should just try to encourage our people in our watershed to do fire mitigation, so we can reduce the risk for a wildland fire, and then therefore contaminate all of our water supply that John Mountain has mentioned to me.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
conversation before.
And with education about, like, oh, I mean, most people should know this, but, oh, you want the willows, you want all this stuff. Don't cut all that, like it's definitely a fine line about what you want to cut. Like, too much cutting can create erosion that then heavy rains puts a lot of just dirt in the river. So I fully agree with you about that, but also there's a balance on mitigation. And it just comes with education that I think should be part of this. If we create an ordinance, there should be a segment where we create education on that, either probably through some kind of internet handout or website or something.
Eric, I always depend on your
Yeah, I was
judgment.
going to
I was-
ask for the folks in the room to
I
talk.
was
to-
just gonna say
Mhm.
that I think that what we're talking about is regulating potential impacts, right? Not really uses. Like, I don't feel that comfortable regulating how people build or use their land or their neighbors' lands outside of town so much, right? There's something feels kind of iffy about that. But I am interested in regulating impacts on the town. And so I think there must be some balance between these two mechanisms, Crested Butte and what was the other one? Victor. Victor's is very thin, kind of just says run it by us. And Crested Buttes seems almost like absurdly nitpicky, down to like literally how many feet your fence can be from this or that, embankment. So I'm not sure that we want to go that direction fully. So what I'm interested in doing is looking at, what are the impacts what are the uses that could impact our water supply in the worst possible ways, and how do we have a seat at the table in managing those potential uses, right? I'm not sure that even in the Crested Butte one, you can get the FONSI, the finding of no, I can't remember what it was, significant impact, right? So the finding of no significant impact applied to uses that would remain the same but just be modified, right? So if someone were to modify their septic system under that Crested Butte ordinance, then they would probably get a FONSI anyway, and we wouldn't be regulating that under the Crested Butte ordinance. So I think we're getting maybe too into the weeds on it, and I would like to look at what are the possible impacts. So to me, it's the amount of water that's coming into our intake and the quality of the water that's coming into the intake. And if we can maybe require simply a finding of facts about those two things related to a drilling operation, a mining operation, an agricultural use, I'm not going to give an exhaustive list here, but those kinds of major developments and major, water impacts, if we could get a statement of fact about that and then decide whether or not to intervene as a town, I think that would make the most sense as a regulatory mechanism. Just to me, I don't know how that sounds to a lawyer, but to me, that makes the most sense. Rather than simply saying, well, if you're going to dig a hole, you got to run it by the town of Ned, right? I think that's too much. And at the same time, I think limiting the potential uses that might impact our water in the ordinance would also put us in a bad place, because then someone might come and do something and skirt around the ordinance that would lead us to have no power to do anything about it, right? So we need to be both broad but reasonable simultaneously. And I'm not sure that either Victor's or Crested Butte's method does what I'm looking for, but I would be curious to see if we can manage to figure something out.
Did I just hear you volunteer to reconcile? Okay. It depend on you also for process. I guess going around the room, this is a discussion item. How important is it to us to act on this now versus putting other things before it? And then what would be a process to coming to a decision that makes sense?
I mean, I think talking to the town of Eldora makes a lot of sense, but coming, like Tom said, coming to the table with something that we
once we
actually
have-
want to do, rather than just general, like if I were a resident of Eldora and I saw that Crested Butte example, I'd maybe start itching a little bit, and get a little frustrated. So I don't think we can come in that hot, but I'd like to come in with something that's reasonable, that doesn't affect folks' day-to-day lives, because their day-to-day lives have not been a burden on our water system, right, to this point. At least we have no evidence to
And they
that.
chose to live there, not here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, like if there were to be some operation that moved in, I would want Nederland to have a say.
Yeah. Nicole?
Yeah, so the other thing that I'm sort of grappling with is, so coming to the table, having a seat, and then, but, you know, would it be us coming to the seat irregardless of what the regulations are in Boulder County or the city of Boulder? In other words, is some of the arguments that have come up, it's like, well, Boulder does this, or this, and I'm just trying to figure out if that matters or not. Like, if it matters that Boulder County is really strong in something, does that still mean that we don't duplicate efforts? I mean, maybe we want to, because then it's still a voice at the table, right? Rather than just saying, oh, no problem, Boulder County, you got that one, right? So I don't know that that's necessarily in our best interest. And that's maybe something that it would be interesting to know what those duplicative efforts are, or what is going on for our own edification. But I don't know that that necessarily means that would pull us away from also not having the same things covered.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm the least interested in is all the best management practices stuff written into an ordinance. Like that gets really into the weeds and down into some details that I'm feeling not that comfortable applying to a different town, right? Rather than our own. If they have an impact on our water supply, I would like to be able to say, you have to stop and mitigate that impact. How they mitigate that impact, to me, is up to them, right? But that the impact is mitigated is all I care about. Does that make sense? Like, I just want our water to get to town in the
Clean.
correct amount and to not be contaminated.
Yep. That makes sense. Yeah, so it's outcomes-based focus, as opposed to prescriptive.
Right, like impacts focused rather than use focused.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
I can imagine if I lived in Eldora and somebody gave me the Crested Butte packet and said, read up. They'd say, that's an impact in its own.
Yeah.
Okay. Tanya?
But we don't want to wait for.
Actually, Tanya, I'm going to keep it in the room for a while. John?
Yeah, I just had one or two quick questions. This particular issue is kind of near and dear to my heart. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gilman, Colorado, the ghost town above Minturn. They were immediately and emergently evacuated because of gross contamination of the water. And I'm curious to know if, it's still a ghost town to this day. So that's kind of it's a fascinating study. If you ever get a chance, you can hike up there. It's pretty bizarre. But I guess one of the questions that I have is, I'm also staunchly against a huge governmental effort to try to regulate further on in addition to what's already happening. But have there been studies by engineering groups presently on how potential storage options could mitigate some of these potential contamination disaster scenarios, such as huge ash fallout or the release of a mine tank that completely, contaminates the water to the point where the systems can't handle and have to be shut down, the contamination levels. So I'm just curious to know if possible storage methods could mitigate around this, such that we don't even have to consider it as a regulatory feature of the town.
something that would give us a couple of days or?
A couple of days to, maybe shut down or to sediment out a large scale contamination, immediate emergent contamination event such as ash fallout from a major fire or there's a bunch of arsenic in most mine tailings and a huge washout from like a flood event or something like that has been known to contaminate water supplies to the point where the town had to shut down. So those would be, I mean, one might be a more likely scenario than the other, but those would be two examples of gross contamination that.
Well, I think that we have to do that anyway,
Yeah.
for sure. I don't think that this would replace that, right? Because we can't regulate a wildfire, whether we, like it or not. We can't say, hey, that's a non-conforming use of that forest land. But though, at least the way I see it is, what if there's an ongoing contamination due to a particular use that's happening upstream from us, and we have no power to shut it down, right? That's what this would provide us. And to me, that's really what we're talking about here. Not like nitpicking at where people, plant their willows necessarily, but rather somebody's contaminating our water supply. We have the power to stop it.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, Eric. I think I'm 100% for the continued and more increased sample idea of the intake water. I think that's a great start. Knowing what we don't know is, I think, critical in terms of next steps. But I guess I'm also curious to know if we could be doing a parallel effort with regard to water storage and make that also a high priority item that would largely mitigate many of the issues that we're trying to do mitigation on with the regulatory efforts. So again, I'm just, it's nice to be able to not have to regulate because we have controls in place around that. So just thoughts there. And I was wondering if am I saying it right? Denali?
Dina Talley.
Dina Talley has done studies on how particular types of storage might mitigate around some of those events. The ones that I'm most concerned of are immediate and emergent catastrophic events, because those will shut down the water completely. So
Having in the ordinance, I'm not sure is going to prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
I on one hand, as a believer in personal rights and rights for the town, this is a right the state gives us if we take it. And I'm inclined to take it without increasing our administrative burden or our coercion of others who just want to be left alone. But I believe strongly that if we grab it, we better identify the risks we're most concerned about, engineer around some of them, and draft around the rest legally.
And to Nicole's point, Boulder County has some regulatory power that we have seen in the very recent past they have declined to really use, especially when it significantly impacts small communities in the county. So I do think it's important for us to have our seat at the table.
We have so few
I
smaller towns to boss around.
Tanya, what were you going to ask? Tanya?
It was just from a few comments ago about waiting. Eric said something about, well, let's just wait for a problem and then we tell them they have to stop. And I was going to say, well, we don't really want that to happen. We don't want a problem. We want to be able to anticipate problems and not allow that to occur in the first place. But
That's not what I meant. Sorry.
Okay, well, that's how I interpret it. No big deal. That was my comment. But I also don't want to overregulate and get crazy. I think this should be very broad and really just relating to bigger operations and not so much about what a typical homeowner could possibly do to our watershed. which I don't think they're going to be able to do a whole lot. I mean, we'll stick obviously the pesticides and that sort of stuff. Yeah, but that's kind of where I stand. If Arapahoe Ranch were to get bought by a large mine or something, we'd want to have some, I'm not saying that's happening. I'm just like putting in, or a bunch of cows coming in and mucking up the water. I'd like to have something that we could say no, but I don't want to be requiring every homeowner in Eldora to have to come to town hall and ask for a permit for fences and whatnot.
So I think we kind of agree that, we don't want to be this overburdening some neighbor to Eldora. At the same time, I agree with those who, that we do, well, I also believe that we want to use the rights we have to protect our water, because I think it's kind of irresponsible not to. And I did put this on the list, and maybe some of you others did as well, to talk with the county about when we meet with them next Monday, and that this particular thing. But I like the idea of us getting clear about what we want. When we talk to the county, figure out where do we overlap with them, where do we have concerns that they don't have concerns, where are they hurting from, where do they struggle with the bandwidth to oversee things, and where could we pick things up. I think it's interesting. The idea is kind of a different conversation with the city of Boulder about, we're near their reservoir and, how we impact them. But going back to the county, I just ways in which we can work with them and kind of understand what they prioritize and what they can do and can't do. And then to me, it's kind of, potential mining, but I think, the town of Eldora, just due to numbers, has its own potential for people polluting. But I think the ski area is maybe the big entity that could, where something could happen up there. And as for fire mitigation, I think we all need to work together on that. But yeah, I agree. It's education and, but short of paying for it, it may be a struggle for some people to actually do it in a way that would protect the water above us. But again, yeah, to me, I look forward to, being able to talk to the county about it. And I'm for those. I am for some kind of watershed protection ordinance.
So
there are two questions before the board. Actually, do you want me to touch on those, or do you want to go ahead and go for it? Say what you say, then I'll do it.
yeah, so go ahead, go to the.
So the question is before the board. Does the Board of Trustees have any questions about the watershed protection map? Which we've asked some, but if you have more, feel free to ask them. And what prohibited activities does the Board of Trustees want to require permitting for under the watershed protection ordinance?
So I guess this is where it would kind of be like, what are next steps, or what can we direct town to do?
Right.
And it sounds like there were a few things that I heard. One, have a conversation with Eldora, making them aware. Two would be to maybe have direct town staff to do that investigation and that research into what City of Boulder does, Boulder County, the EPA, and just for our own edification, just know what are they looking out for, and maybe that might clue us into what we want to look for, or look at and have a seat at the table. And then potentially there's finding, I don't know, better way to put it, like a middle ground, so to speak, of, something in the middle, impact-based.
You mean between Victor and Crested
Between
Butte?
Victor and Crested Butte, right? Those would be the three action items that I'm hearing coming out of this, unless somebody's got something else.
So creating kind of a plan that works for us, that looking at Victor, looking at Crested Butte, probably somewhere in the middle. And then once we have our ducks in a row to talk with Eldora, that we would talk with Eldora. And what was your first thing you said?
And then the other one was just for research purposes, knowing what City of Boulder oversees, Boulder County, just for awareness, and just if there is that overlap and who overlaps with who.
Yeah, I was curious, Jennifer. I mean, because when you read the statute, it says 5 miles above intake. So, does the reservoir count as an intake? Because it's still got to go all the way down the canyon. Like, how does it? Like, if City of Boulder did a watershed ordinance, 5 miles doesn't quite get them to Eldora, so or Netherlands, so how does it even work?
I'm sorry, the last.
Yeah, so I was kind of talking about, I'm sorry, it's a little confusing, but when we talk about looking at the EPA, looking at the county, looking at the city, and Jesse talked about maybe we can work with the city, the city of Boulder, if they can help us with some, with their concerns with our water quality, maybe, there could be some give and take or some trades with them, but I was just curious out of that whole conversation. When I read that thing, it says 5 miles above an intake. Does that include reservoirs, or
Where,
because their intake for their water supply is farther down canyon?
It's a Patasso, right? It's the Patasso treatment plant. So it's ages away from us.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like we're actually way out of their watershed ordinance legally anyways.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they have drafted it. I mean, this is a statute that's been in place for a very long time. But there hasn't been much litigation surrounding the definition and what does it mean. So it's subject to interpretation. But I think the strong argument is from where the water is taken, which I heard you talking about that point in the room. And so that wouldn't be a storage place, but it would be where the water is taken from to the plant.
Yeah, that's how I understood it.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Sounds good.
So, and one follow-up thing just to think about is when considering a middle ground and adopting or looking at drafting language for a regulation. One thing that's helpful to keep in mind is what is a triggering event that would require people to come to the town and say, hey, I want you to evaluate what I'm doing related to your interest in protecting the watershed.
right. Yeah, I mean, I haven't fully thought it through, yet, exactly how it would work. But I was kind of thinking of a process that we could essentially be notified and choose to take no action quite rapidly, right? To reduce the administrative burden on our staff and to not bring, some kind of lengthy application to the BOT for something that doesn't have a significant impact on our water supply. So whatever, I don't really know what it is, what that triggering point is. It seems to me that we should enumerate in some way, at least some kind of development, right? I'm not exactly sure how to word it, but some kind of development that requires notification. And notification could result in town asking for an application, right? Or not, or we could give them a finding of no significant impact and they can be off on their merry way, right? And the threshold for that notification, I think, is, as Attorney Madsen says, the key, at least in my mind, for how this would work. Like you come to town staff, you say, this is what I'm doing, here's what it looks like, and they say, this has got to go before the board, or they say, yeah, no problem, finding of no significant impact, and we go on.
It seems like talking about the county, because the county probably has some kind of process of, just their basic permitting process, but they would be maybe the conduit that, when we talk to them next week, we can just start that conversation, but maybe they can be the conduit that sends things our way as needed or doesn't, or just letting us know that someone's applied for a permit in the county.
You would want something that in your ordinance, you want to have that specificity as to what that triggering event is, so that if nobody contacted you and it was discovered that there were impacts to your watershed, that then there could be consequences for failing to contact, and then also steps that you could take to make sure that mitigating factors are put in place to protect the watershed.
So it's got to kind of go both directions where, we have a system set up where they come to us for permitting of things that are yet to do. And then also, it's clear in our ordinance that if they bypass that or, somehow triggered a triggering event, then we kind of go back at them from the other direction. So I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a direct, in my mind, order for Jennifer at this point, unless, we have to think about where is that sweet spot between Victor and Crested Butte, and who's going to figure that out.
Who do we want to do the research?
Yeah.
I mean, I think someone who has expertise in impacts on water supplies would be really, really helpful here.
Right.
Because I'm just speaking out of like common sense logic, not
Right.
expert logic, right? So I mean, to me, it's obvious, like drilling into the ground, diverting water in any way from its regular course, major agricultural use of a certain, maybe any agricultural use, fundamentally, mining.
Would this fall, Miranda, would this fall under like the purview of like JVA, Dean and Tally, people that already work with us as?
Yeah, I was raising my hand. So I think it would be Denatali Water. They would want a new scope though. We can't enroll this into the current work they're doing. I think it's separate from.
People just don't care.
And Miranda, what about Ashley too, that we
Yeah.
worked with to draw that map? I mean, she might be a really good resource.
Yeah, she seemed to know the whole process of how this came to be in Crested Butte.
I guess I do just wonder, again, these are expenses that you didn't budget for. And so I am wondering, do you want to try to us to at least have those initial conversations with Boulder County and City of Boulder? Is this something you're financially prioritizing? Because that's something we have to evaluate here, is that we just don't have the funding structure to bring Ashley or Denatali Water on board. So I guess I'm just trying to assess kind of where you feel this falls urgency wise.
So that is the ultimate. So what Miranda's bringing up, this isn't budgeted for. Do we prioritize this as something to budget for? And Tom, I'm kind of looking at you because I know this is something you're passionate about. So, but in light of everything else that we have going on, right? Where does
Yeah.
this fall?
I think we took initial steps. We looked at ordinances that work. We drew our map at a relatively minor expense. So we know the extent to what we're talking about. This identified that we're dipping into another county, that we're encapsulating a town, and so on. But it's not budgeted. And I'd be comfortable at this point giving it a pause until this fall, and then dealing with some of the things that are in front of us.
And work it into maybe next year's budget?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Do you think maybe if we had another conversation in the fall about this, that maybe we direct town staff, just an idea, to do some comparisons between the various regulatory bodies that already exist, because we don't need an expert, outside expert to do that. We can direct town staff to do that. So
No, we can direct them now, is what
Right.
you're saying. Yeah. in
Yeah.
the
Give a
fall.
nod. I would give a nod for that.
Yeah, they know what they're testing for, and they know what they're not testing for because it's too hard or it'd be catastrophic, or you hope this never happens, so you don't normally test for it. But the folks, I think in the fall, I'd like, when we take a look at this, again, I think there's a lot of things we can do with the team that we've got in a handful of experts we already work with.
So
Yeah, but I would agree with Eric before the fall to have more information in place as to exactly what is Boulder County requiring, so that we're not asking that question again. That question's already checked off.
the one thing I will say is the town is involved in City of Boulder's conversations. And so those are slow going, as is most. And so I do think if we bring this back in the fall, town staff will have more information because we're heavily involved in their watershed protection ordinance.
Oh, the city of Boulder does not have a watershed protection ordinance at the moment?
I don't know if they have, I mean, all I know is that they're working on one, whether they currently have one in their Attorney Manchin's shaking her head, so I'm going with no. They don't have one and they're building one. And so they met with town staff.
Yes.
Oh gosh, probably end of last year to just start to kind of give us kind of an initial heads up of what they're looking for. And they're trying to have kind of a very collaborative meeting to talk about what thoughts we have as neighbors, and that's of course Barker is their water supply and where we discharge into. It's not their intake site, but just kind of wanting to have a really comprehensive discussion about just water quality and the work we're all doing. And it ties into our phosphorus agreement with them.
Interesting.
I think understanding both that and what the current permitting processes are for Boulder County and the current BPMs that they have in place would be really helpful for the next conversation.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to make one clarification for folks out there. Public comment has already happened on this discussion item. We'll have public comment in the next two when we get there. Do you feel like you have the marching orders you need?
I mean, I
for-
guess I'm
for a
wondering there.
fall meeting?
Yeah, just temporarily kind of throw it on the agenda for fall, and we'll assess that maybe when we get to September, October. Does
Mhm.
that seem fair?
That sounds good to me. Everyone else?
I don't feel like this is necessarily aligned with any priority that I feel like we've discussed. I don't feel like we've completed a sort of a goals process of what are our goals as a BOT, this current BOT. And I feel like we're giving Miranda a suggestion to go off and work on something that may or may not have the support of the BOT, that may or may not be aligned with our goals and values as a BOT. And, you know, I feel like the board retreat was a step in the right direction towards establishing what that is as our common value set and our goal structure. But I don't feel that that has been completed at any point at this point, and I don't feel comfortable directing Miranda or town staff to spend time and effort on this until we've completed that process. So that's where I'm at with it.
That was listed as one of the goals that we are, yet to.
Amongst
work
30
through.
things on the sheet, perhaps.
So the one thing I would just say, and I do appreciate that, Trustee Severs, is so when it comes to City of Boulder, town's involvement's happening regardless, so we'll have that information. I think we could do kind of a quick conversation with Boulder County, but I would say that that's probably as far as town staff would go on this. And then we just hold that information. We can provide an update to the Board of Trustees via email, but maybe hold further discussion, but at least get some of these questions you have crossed off from quick conversations with Boulder.
That'd be great. I think for now we will tentatively schedule it for the fall, and then just talk more about it. Well, combination of whatever we discuss with the county next week, what we do and don't prioritize in the BOT work sessions retreat, and if we are looking at budget and everything and seeing if this is something to work in the fall, we'll do that. Thanks.
That sounds great. This is Tanya. If this comes back in the fall, I just would like a little more information. I don't want to repeat of this meeting. I'd like us to have like a clearer path of what we want to do and more information about what Boulder County already requires, but that's just me.
I agree. But I guess I mean, Jesse brings up a good point, and we'll see what comes out of the next work session and where this falls in priorities and budget, and we have time to put it on the budget later. Put it on the agenda later. So with that, I'm going to move on to our second discussion item tonight: housing needs assessment, public engagement. This is going to be presented by Miranda and Britt.
Yep. So Britt is on, but I'm going to take the lead here. So of course the town hasn't started on its housing needs assessment. We've been working on it for the last 6 months with Bohannon and Houston. Currently kind of in the data analysis phase where Bohannon and Houston is looking at current code, current plans, gathering as much data as they possibly can. But a large part of that is the public outreach and engagement through our interactive map that we have, our community survey, and then of course the workshop that happened a few weeks ago. The challenge we're seeing though is very minimal turnout, especially when it comes to the survey. So we had 27 people show up to the workshop, which is probably pretty typical for us, but only 29 people have either completed the survey or participated in the interactive map that we're aware of. That map's a little bit harder to track. We've sent it out through email, social media, QR codes on the back of residential bills, tried to do our best to really blast it wherever we could. Housing subcommittee met last week and talked a bit about the low turnout, and Trustee Sterling and Mayor Billy sit on that committee and asked that this be brought forward just to have some discussion. We of course met with Bohannon Houston and Peter Kasich as our public engagement manager and started kind of talking about, do we want to leave it open longer? And of course the answer was yes. But what are kind of some options we have before us? Peter feels like what's missing is, while it's great graphics and it's out there, the why, of course, is not being pushed enough. And so maybe really looking at some video clips of individuals in the community who are impacted by housing, potentially some BOT members talking about, how changing code will have a positive impact on our housing needs, and just grabbing as many kind of little video snippets that we can push out. So that's something he's going to work on. Katrina Harms is going to do a Mountaineer article. And then we did talk about flyer mailings. Originally, that was not a part of the plan because of the expense. It would be about $1,000 that we didn't budget for, but could absorb that in a couple of our current publication budgets. And what we would do is mail out the flyer with the QR codes, encouraging people to participate. We, of course, would love any feedback the community has or the board has about the public engagement, any other avenues that they feel like maybe we're missing. And then also, what role do you see yourselves playing, or is anyone interested in being a part of the video clip? We didn't plan to hold another workshop, but Britt and I are happy to do so. We're just looking to get creative. And of course, Peter is going to work a couple avenues on his own. But since Trustee Sterling and Mayor Billy asked for us to bring this, we would like to hear from you.
Thanks, Miranda. Any questions for Miranda? Or Nicole or me?
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree that without the why, people won't probably put the time in being surveyed. I think spending another $1,000 on another piece of junk mail, that I think we know how to pitch them pretty fast. If it's not of interest, I think it'd be wasted. I don't know that people understand why we're asking even, the average person, they're either thinking this is about affordable housing, this is about workforce housing. Is not my concern, and I don't know if we're going to be able to drum much more. Bohannon in Houston does this for a living. Did they have any feedback on what others have gone through and what was effective ultimately?
Of course, it varies by community to community. They have said that they've struggled in other small communities. To your point, Mayor Pro Tem Mahold, it's complex because it's not just like, where do you build housing? Like, that's what the map is. The map is asking you where you build housing, where you don't want to build housing. But the survey is much more in depth. It starts to really ask people about their feelings about yard and bulk requirements and setbacks and minimum lot sizes and annexation. It's complex, of course. And so, but that's kind of what we need. The purpose of this housing needs assessment, just so the community knows, is to make changes within code that provides the ability to have affordable or alternative housing. And some examples might be, you change your maximum lot sizes slightly, you might be able to, have duplexes on a lot or look at other building potentials. And so that's why this grant is so focused on your land use plan changes. And so we need to start to ask that question. It's not about, do you want affordable housing or not? It's, what type of housing would you like to see developed here in Nederland? So the survey, I think it's long. I think it takes about 10, 15 minutes to complete, but I think all the questions are necessary. They ran through the subcommittee and I think we narrowed it down the best we could, but in order to really do what is required under this grant, we need all that data. And so I know someone had recommended like maybe we change the survey, and I just don't think that's an option here. We just need to try to really push out, to your point, like the why, and I think that's through videos, word of mouth, creating probably a better elevator speech than I'm even giving of what that why is.
At what point do we have the number of the sample size that we need?
You know, in Netherlands, hard when it comes to sample size, right? It's like the animal survey got hundreds of, I think it was like 109. It's like, why is that? So why are people more passionate about that maybe than this? And perhaps that's the wrong way of viewing that, but it's hard. 29 is normal. I hate to say that, but it's very normal. But of course, we would like to see the turnout we got for the keeping animal survey. We would love to sample even a third of our community, but that's always going to be very challenging for Nederland. So I think that a large reason of that public engagement position being built is to really look at what is that sample size, but I'm not sure the Netherlands really ever figured out what is that optimal kind of sweet spot for number of participants.
And Miranda, real quick, for the annexation survey that we had done, what was that? That was about,
It was up there.
it was 80, 90 maybe?
I was just gonna look.
So
It
just kind of
was-
juxtaposing those two
Yeah,
might
I'm
give
sorry.
us.
Annexation was 109 and animals was 143.
Okay. So 100 and we are styling.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of spending $1,000 to print flyers, could we incentivize? Could we do a raffle?
So let's, if it's okay, to just kind of create ideas, because, I've been thinking of a few. So yeah, one on the table would be, I'll pay you X number.
Or you're entered into a competition?
You're entered into win
Mm-hmm.
$500.
Or even a coffee and a macaron at New Moon.
A what?
A
Right.
coffee and a macaron at New Moon.
Yeah, I was going to say a gift certificate to a local business.
Dish out to see 100 folks.
Like Ned's.
$10. Another, idea is
Get your two
coordinating-
favorite potholes filled in town.
Amen.
Adam, you need to stay muted. Just so when Mayor Billy
Yeah, we'll
calls
take
for
public comment
that's the
later,
time
but for
we
now, it's just the Board of Trustees and Miranda and staff talking.
So I think we kind of know what the sample size we need to get is.
Yep.
We've got a new community engagement manager. Maybe we can sort this out. You probably had a few more suggestions too.
What sort of upcoming events, I guess I would say, where we might be able to pair, even if we did print out some of these surveys and shoved it in front of people at some event. I mean,
When does the farmer's market start, Tanya?
In a couple weeks, 14th or something.
so farmers markets, any
Yeah.
other bigger events that might be happening that'll attract more locals, might be something else that we sort of throw into the mix. Again, even if it's paper copies that we're putting, I mean,
What
I was
about
at the
food
Salto
pantry?
dinner a couple weeks ago. There were like 80 people in there. I was like, oh,
Wow.
everyone in one spot.
Now that's community engagement.
That's community engagement. Excuse me, before you start your dinner, I'm going to need you to fill out this.
Yeah, if you get
so
that
we did
dinner
this-
for filling out the survey, then that's a no-brainer.
You might get that dinner, and that was an awesome dinner. And I mean, the ticket prices on there are pretty. So yeah, I mean, there could be some conversations to be had with some of the local.
It is a very cumbersome survey. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not the same as the two that we're comparing it to, right? In
No.
the animal ordinance, and like it's not a 2-question survey that you can just click done. It's significant, and it's asking you for a lot of personal information, like from income to everything, really.
Mm-hmm.
I'll fill the survey out. That's one.
Oh, right, there we go.
Yeah, if a board member hasn't filled out the survey, that's number one.
Oh,
And then
I
we're
will
gonna
too.
blast it again
So
to all the
what is our community
We
engagement
didn't have to reach out very far.
person? Do they have any ideas for
Yeah.
getting this out to the community? It sounds like it's kind of in their jurisdiction.
Peter couldn't join us tonight. And so I did want to, and I know that this was asked to bring before the board, but I do want to offer that reassurance that this Britt did talk with Peter. He really believes very strongly in highlighting the videos, and the videos be a combination of individuals who are comfortable sharing their experiences as it relates to trying to secure housing or maybe some of the struggles with potentially some landowners, BOT members, planning commissioners who are responsible for changing code, and just giving kind of the full spectrum there. So that's his recommendation. And then he and I did kind of talk about events. Of course, we have to cut these surveys off eventually, and I think that's where it gets a little tricky for us. Is we need to move into the code component. We have Bohannon and Houston on kind of technically until December, but the money we have for them will probably run out more closer to the fall. So I think we only have another probably 4 to 6 weeks to leave these surveys open. So that's really the answer, Trustee Corvalon, is really hitting hard the videos and pushing those out through social media channels, because people might be more apt to watch a 1 minute, 30-second clip than they are to look at the flyer. It's just becoming kind of white noise at this point.
And to clarify a little bit
I
on
mean,
the
I
video,
wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say it's been overly shared or overly discussed on the Town of Netherland social media pages. I think you want to get a little bit of debate going and get people to start discussing it and bring the survey up like that, which could be why those other surveys got more traction.
Yeah, I mean, it also doesn't seem like it's one of those topics that gets a lot of attention, or like people are like, ooh, that's something I want to comment on. Because I know I've posted about it, just shared the link. I've seen it come out from town, social media, it's been on the website. It's just, it's.
I'm not seeing it.
to-
I'm on the website right now, and I'm not seeing it.
So it's we are going to move it. So it ended up being moved to the bottom of the website. There's a box at the bottom, but we're going to move it to the top.
No, I mean, I'm not. Yeah. Okay.
To be
Well,
one
I
of
just
the
think there could be a little
ribbons at the
more.
top. It's actually the second ribbon now on the top of the town website, and it's at the bottom.
But I mean, like even on the Facebook page, I'm looking at right now, I'm not even finding it. Like
So the
these are
Facebook, of
things-
course, is going to move quickly. So we posted it, I think we determined maybe 5 times on our Facebook platform, but of course we have other things that have to be posted as well. So it's just going to move down the line.
Okay.
That's going to always be the challenge of social media is you're going to have other posts that come up.
So, Miranda, in terms of the video, I'm of course happy to partake in that. It's kind of maybe the first edition of BOTV. But I think one of the other things to clarify too, and I think what was really important, and this is what the consultants were, painting the picture of, is that people have very polarizing views of what affordable means, right? And here we want to personify it a bit and bring a teacher in, bring someone who works at Eldora, or, like the community members that truly are struggling with this. It's not, people oftentimes will have this image of like, it's, it means something. It means something derogatory. And it's like, these are just people just trying to survive in our community. And so, really focusing the videos on those type of folks is important. These are working professionals that just need support.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good exercise to get into the video business. I mean, essentially, do we know any filmmakers?
Hold on. Pause. Waiting.
Yeah, anyway. But I think it's a matter, it's a type of communication we haven't done enough of. And I think it can be very powerful. And I think it's a skill set we're going to get better at. And I don't think there's any better time to get started.
Well, I'll shoot a video if you want, but I won't be in it.
I'm still there. Taking my camera and I'm going home.
It has to be Billy and it has to be written by Nicole.
Okay.
The director is in the house.
Uh-oh.
So Miranda, what else is on Peter's plate at this point? Is this something that can be prioritized? But I asked the question wanting to know, like, because I know there are other things going on.
Yeah, I'd like to turn it over to Britt's. I think was going to come off mute, so let me just answer that, and then Britt. I think it's important to note that Peter is yet to fully transition into his role. As of today, he is still the administrative assistant. He, I believe, made a conditional job offer today, but he is still in the dual role and likely will be for 2 more weeks. So I just do want to highlight that. So what's on his plate is covering the front desk and trying to get as much integration into the public engagement role as he can. But we did talk about this being a priority, and then Britt, you obviously Britt actually was the one who met with Peter. So do you want to chime in on that too? Because it's also a priority for Britt.
Yeah, so can you hear me on
We
this?
do. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I would say, you know, for me, I think as town staff, what I'm at, you know, what we're kind of asking is we also want the Board of Trustees to be, you know, speaking about this and also sharing. Your positions, you know, come with a lot of power and people are looking up to you. And so it's a little, I would say, disappointing to hear that like not even some of the board members have taken the survey. Because, you know, we are trying to push this out. So like one of our thought process is, you know, can you speak about it? Can you share it? We've, you know, heard and seen your voices loud on different platforms of social media. And so, you know, as town staff, I would be asking like, can use your voice as well. I think that would help us a lot. Sometimes it might be a little bit different coming from you as a board member than it does come from town staff. So that would just be something I think that would help, whether it's on our town social media pages or your own social media pages or Nedheads, as we know a lot of people post on. You know, I would just ask that use your voice as well. I think that would help and go a long way. And we'll keep coming up with ideas because it's very important to me and it's very important to Peter as well. But just an ask.
One suggestion, we got 2 weeks before the first farmer's market. That might be a really good place to get some footage. And to get the clips of, as Britt suggested, BOT members in a different element. But maybe we could build it around, you know, we do have that kind of urgency. I think by 2 weeks, we should have at least 7 more surveys done. But I
6.
okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Some people took it, but I mean,
I'll do the survey and also do a video.
we are gonna blast it
Yes, Jesse.
through, so the links will go out to your different boards and commission. So it will go to your email. Again, but to Britt's point, it's like sharing it within your own network. I think on a lot of the emails we've sent out, we're like, and share this, and we don't know how much that's happened. Like, hopefully, it's super easy to just hit the forward button and send it to everybody you know. But again, you know, really highlighting that importance. But I do feel we have a plan. I feel very confident and put full trust in Britt and Peter that they're coming up with every avenue they possibly can. But they do really need board member support and kind of rallying behind this. I appreciate Britt you saying that. And I think that's really why this is before you, is to just say like, we're going to do the best we can as staff to keep pushing this, but please jump on board with us. So thanks to Billy and Nicole for adding this on.
Okay, so we need a script.
Oh, boy.
We're doing it.
BOTV is born, finally. Not finally. Thank you. And
Can we just-
are there any more? Okay, we need to open this up for public comment, public engagement. So 3 minutes. If you want to make a comment, you can raise your hand or start speaking. Tanya Unger, your hand has been up, so. Tanya.
Thank you, Mayor Billy. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So first of all, I wanted to say if there's any need that you have on water from a citizen volunteer, I have 25 years experience and used to be a member of the Colorado Water Congress. I would be happy to begin researching anything to augment town staff. Next, I would like
Thank
to
you.
say that I would most definitely, pardon me, love to be a part of a video, standing at the farmer's market, asking people the questions on the survey or roundabout ways of doing that, helping the town in any way, because housing is of the utmost import to me. And we did discuss that on Saturday when we had Bernard Amadei in the room, and there were a lot of people discussing it and passionate about it. So, I mean, a lot of 10. But anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Please count on me, and I'd love to do a video, whatever needs to be done to help spread the word, and also call out the information from those of us who are unhoused, couch hopping, sleeping in the forest. Because if you go and do this at some kind of event, like for example, the fundraiser for the teen center, you have an entirely different demographic answering those questions. And I want to make sure that we're not pushed out of town. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Tanya. Appreciate it. Sorry I missed it Saturday. Tom said it was a great
It was good.
presentation.
Thanks very much for organizing it.
Thank you for coming, Tom.
I had a conflict with my daughter's birthday party. I apologize.
Oh, Billy, no apologies necessary. We're going to do some more of those, so there'll be time.
Great. Any other questions for Tanya?
I've
If
got
not, oh, go ahead.
one last one for us. Did we get any, did anybody get any footage when we were doing the charrettes in here 3 weeks ago? Miranda?
There wasn't video footage, but I know there's photos.
Okay, it could be helpful. Next time, let's grab a camera.
Or a phone. Any other public comments out there?
Kathleen Jabai has her hand up. I'm not sure if she's also.
Kathleen, we'll give you some time if you need to switch over to the phone.
And I think maybe Barb, did you have a comment? Oh, they left Kathleen.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, I just want to say some facts are that the last housing study showed that we needed less than 30 units, and that was before Boulder County built their apartments, and now Ron is proposing over 25 bedrooms in his Amsterdam project. So I'm not sure what kind of housing we need. If you go to the town website and put in housing study into the search, nothing comes up other than Billy's Corner, which if you go to that, yes, it has a link at the bottom about the housing needs study, but it's nobody would click on that because it doesn't say it's a housing needs study or a housing study at all. I don't think it's been shared barely at all, to be honest. I've tried to find it numerous times and was unable. Maybe people aren't responding because the people that are already in houses don't have a housing problem other than the problem everyone's experiencing now with inflation, rent, and mortgages going up. So, and town doesn't have control over that. Or maybe the people have no interest in finding or providing other people's housing because it would be on public land. And that's one thing I'm against. As Eric stated, when the two families in Old Town, they asked town to give them, turn over the title to the land between them that isn't being used by town and that their families have been maintaining for decades. Eric and others agreed that we weren't going to give up public land for the benefit of one or two families. And this is the same thing. Like, even if you consider housing where the old town shop is, I think that allows 2 or 3, at most 4 houses. So that's 4 families that get to use public land, and everyone else doesn't have right to use that public land. So maybe you have to consider that there really isn't a housing needs problem other than, yes, admittedly, some people cannot afford to live in Nederland anymore. but they cannot afford to live in Colorado or almost anywhere. And that, it's not something I think that the town of Nederland can solve. But I do have to say I'm really discouraged on the fact that the survey hasn't been shared. I myself haven't taken it. I did get to review the first page of questions, and I don't know what you're attending to get out of the survey is people's personal opinions about whether or not there's enough housing or not. I don't understand the point of it. What needs to happen is the housing needs study needs to be completed, and they need to tell us how many house spaces we're lacking. And honestly, since the last housing needs study, I'm not sure we're lacking any housing, because we've built the Boulder County thing, and now Ron's proposing even more. So just those considerations. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Any other public comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Barb.
Hey, Barbara Hart, 245 Apollo Drive, Blackhawk. I just wanted to say that we have done a little bit of outreach through the Mountaineer for this type of, to get the information out to the public, sorry. We could do something like an ad in the Mountaineer asking people to participate. We will be doing a saturation of Nederland the first week of June. That means every single address that is 80466 routes and PO boxes will get a free newspaper, and it would be a perfect week to put it in there. If you can wait to till June to get the word out there. It's also the town cleanup weekend, so you could also hand it out at town cleanup to try to get more people to participate that way.
Barb, thanks for your suggestions and your ideas.
Yeah, thanks, Barb.
Thanks.
We could also have the info at the MFP community yard sale. It's happening on that same weekend, which we get hundreds of people through there.
When's that again?
That is June. That's that same weekend as town cleanup. So the first
Oh, yeah,
weekend in
June 3rd.
The first weekend in June.
So like this, the issue with the survey is that nobody's going to fill it out at a farmer's market or the town cleanup or the Mountain Forum for Peace sale. It's just way too long. But you're saying like have people give them the link, give them what?
Yeah, there could at least be more awareness that the survey exists, right? Which I think is a good, good option, even if they can't fill it out right then and there on the spot.
And, perhaps having them fill it out on the spot. I mean, we have to kind of think through that because like the idea of a raffle, if it's anonymous.
There's just no way. This survey is way too in depth. Maybe have like something there, someone with hey, give me your email so I can send you the survey like that. And that would be all. That's all anybody has time to do is give you their email or text number, I think, when they're at these events. That's just my opinion.
Hey, this is Brittany again. I would be open to if, people wanted to give my information out. I understand the survey is very in depth, but I'm happy to just accept email. I think there needs to be some clarification on this study is not just about, how much housing is needed or if affordable housing is needed. I think housing is going to eventually come to Nederland regardless. But we really want the opinions of, what do you want that to look like? Like, what do people want that to look like? So if the survey is just like too in depth, I totally get it. I'm happy to, have my cell phone's number is out there. My email is out there. Contact me. I understand everyone has access to a computer. So like, feel free to share my information. I want to get any information I can from anyone possible. So my cards are at town hall if anybody wants them to like hand them out. Or I can send it to in my an email to the Board of Trustees. Happy to accept the information any way possible because I do understand sitting down and taking the survey may not happen for everyone, or everyone may not want to do that.
Well, and thanks, Brett. I did just wanted the what's in your packet does have this whole section at the bottom, this new flyer that we made that's like prefer to talk to someone, call, and has Derek's information, has Britt's information. We also have a dedicated project phone for this. And it also encourages people just to come by town hall and chat. And it doesn't necessarily mean that their feedback has to be done in the survey format. They can just come and share whatever they want to share about housing. and we can also gather data that way. And so it doesn't have, if the survey is just really pushing people off because of how long it is, like there's just so many other ways in which we just even an informal conversation, we're happy to have it.
I think we'll have more success with that.
The other point that I think is really salient is what Tanya Unger brought up, which is what demographic are we reaching with this survey? I mean, I don't know, I don't think they are, but for instance, if Stocks and Sandwiches was still happening at the Presbyterian Church or something along those lines, we would, access folks who might not be, attending a Salto dinner or even necessarily the farmer's market.
The library might be, because a lot of homeless folks are in the library, come through the library in the summertime. I mean, so I don't know if that's another place where we could just make a very clear advertisement there, but we're, maybe, well, I know we only have a few weeks for the survey, but I don't know how much of an influx we're going to get of homeless folks, but
Well, I think we have
real quick, any other
I mean,
public
the
comments?
clothing
I
closet,
didn't
food
quite.
pantry.
Oh, that's a great idea. Clothing closet and the food pantry would be a really
Yeah, I
good
have
idea.
those written down, and we did distribute flyers to them. I have to check in on where those went. The one thing I would say is I think what we'd like to do is, try to get as much feedback as we can over the next few weeks, and then when the subcommittee meets again on the 24th of May, look at it again, see what our numbers at, and then kind of figure out, okay, are we releasing it for one more month, whatever that might look like. But the subcommittee does meet on the last last Wednesday of every month.
Yeah, are you guys still having those health and human services fairs?
They are, and so I do know that the flyers were there. We gave a ton to Katrina Harms, who oversees that. I think, to your point, Trustee Corvalon, you give a flyer, there's no guarantee.
Yeah, I feel like there needs to be a human presence there, maybe with a little table and, like, hey, have you filled this out? Have you heard about this? What's your opinion? A little more in public engagement. Because people are not that easy to get to do anything.
Can you hear me? Not sure I got unmuted.
I don't know who that is.
It's Dawn Baumhofer. So I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding. I'm not sure we're trying to reach the homeless who are not already residents here. I think that there is a misunderstanding of what's needed here. And I think it's not more housing, it's how do we maintain housing for the people who already live here. I am aware of 3 people currently fully employed in leadership positions within the town of Nederland in different organizations, 2 of them within the town, who are currently in need of long-term housing situations because their places are being sold, death of landlords, and landlords building on their own property. All things that are perfectly legitimate, as Kathleen pointed out. So it's not necessarily always more housing, it's how do we preserve and provide, or do we provide, continuing affordable housing for people who are already here and already full-time contributing members of the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Any other public comments? I only see a couple more folks that might or might not have comments on this item. Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for final discussion and any just addressing the questions before the board.
So
Go ahead.
Tanya.
No, you go.
So I was just thinking as the next step, does it make sense? Jesse said that he's willing to be in the video. Tanya Unger, thank you for, making the suggestion and offering up yourself as well. Would that be something Miranda, that we could do as a top priority. Pull Britt in, pull Peter, and put something together as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think Britt and Peter were gonna kind of take it from here, and so that based on your feedback tonight, Britt and I meet tomorrow, but I think those trustees and Tanya can expect to hear from Britt or Peter to get that set up pretty quickly. Britt, does that sound fair to you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Anyone who does want to participate, if you just want to shoot me an email with those people, then I will work with your schedules to figure out how we want to do that.
And maybe I can just repeat what I have, and perhaps if that's okay, Trustee Sterling, are you good if I just do a quick rundown of what I wrote down?
Sure.
So I have, the videos. Thank you, Kathleen. So the housing needs study, unfortunately, when it turns into a banner, it doesn't add to the search bar. So we'll be sure that when you search housing needs, it comes up. And we'll also look at kind of, again, the robust social media campaign and being mindful that we do have other things to post about. But participating, though, in Nederland Farmers Market, Town Cleanup, Mountain Farm for PCR sale, Health and Human Services Fair, make sure the food pantry and the clothing closet have enough surveys or the flyers. I guess looking for a little bit of feedback on maybe the board's thoughts about using some of our current publication money for what Barb talked about. That's $600 to make sure that we get like kind of a full page ad that goes to every 80466 address, since it's the free week. Is there any interest in that?
So in thinking about that and just, just kind of, I guess, the marketing strategy in general, what we create in the video, is it possible, and Barb, I guess I'd be looking for your insight on this, is it possible to reflect some of those things that happen in the video to then sort of repeat or sort of, have similarities to what's in the video if we have that printed in the news paper? And it could be featuring a few folks, who are talking about the housing and how they're impacted and the reason why this survey is so important. Or is that outside of the scope of potentially?
That would be possible. Peter creates the ads for the town, so you can include anything you want to in it. You could
Okay.
also, on a different page, do, a letter or a mayor's column. Billy sends in columns. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you could have two different things going on at the same time to point people in that direction. So that would be very easy to do.
And
Yeah, I
Nicole, one
tend
thing
to,
I would say too is through the QR code, we can, because we have a dedicated website for the housing needs assessment, we can make that front and center. So when you scan the QR code, you go to get the survey, maybe the first thing you see are some of the videos, and then you can see the survey. So you're also getting that Y component in there at the same time.
yeah, I am gonna add the blurb on my mayor's corner here coming up. And Barb, I can't remember. Can you guys, I was just thinking this as Nicole was talking, can you do QR codes in the paper or can you not?
No, we can do those in an ad. We can do them in the column if there's enough space. So it really depends on how much you put into it, because we allow that much space every time you send one. So
Okay,
you
so
could you
but
could
in
send
but
a
in the
QR.
ad, but
Yeah,
in
you
the
could.
ad there'd be room.
Yeah. And we've just run line ads so far, which is, just like a paragraph saying, check this out. So that would be a great way to kind of expand on it.
Maybe some letters to the editor would be good too.
We'll always print.
And,
Yep, send
and
those.
I was also thinking flyers down there at the Backdoor Theater might be a place.
And if we, if we wanted to, at some of these in-person events, having someone there and kind of riffing off the idea of the raffle, even though it's anonymous, if we do get somebody that can fill it out while they're there in front of us, and then just show us that they hit the send button or that it's at the end, put their name into just a jar or whatnot, and then make that sort of the raffle $250 award or something,
Oh.
using some of the monies that we have, instead of allocating it to paper mailers, doing it, in that regard. That's just another way.
Well, yeah, we're set with the paper mailers if we can get it in the paper, newspaper. Just gonna go to.
Yeah, I don't know about the raffles. I feel it's a little late now. If we're only been doing this for another month or so. What about? That's just me. My final message is just focus on the why so people know why it's important. That maybe something will actually come of this.
Okay, so I'll read the questions before the board. I think we're, Miranda just gave us a great list, but the first one is, does the BOT have any other recommendations for how to increase participation in housing needs assessment surveys? What role can the BOT play in ensuring that more people are aware of survey and complete it? Are there any BOT members interested in doing a video clip promoting the survey tools? Yes, to number 3. I am. I think we're all good. Any other directives on those questions from the board?
I think the one thing I would say is we can kind of keep the board updated in staff reports where we are, and so we'll give you kind of at the next May meeting, and then in June can kind of keep you posted on what we're seeing results wise.
Sounds good. I think we're going to take a break now I need about 5 minutes, and we'll be back at 9, let's just say 9:12, 7 minutes, to talk about our last discussion item. Turn your mics off. Discussion item of the evening, the town administrator salary review. And Eric and Tom, I think you guys are gonna cover the aim here.
Eric, do you want to cover it or do you want me to?
After you, sir.
Okay. This is around the town administrator compensation. It's a page and a half, but essentially the purpose of the discussion is to determine the board's desire to implement a salary adjustment for the town administrator. The salary currently paid to the town administrator is not competitive with the state of Colorado or Boulder County, or even in the region, and it's puts the town's residents at risk regarding employee recruitment and retention, especially in leadership positions. The current occupant has displayed, I think, outstanding leadership and has, under the most trying of circumstances over the last couple of years, everything from COVID, staffing crises, things that she wasn't necessarily equipped to do, but figure out how to do. I think of the policing, the water, the utilities, and so on. So despite the difficulties, she continued to hire, train, and mentor new staff while taking a significant step forward to advance her own professional development, earning a doctorate in public administration. Under her leadership, members of town staff are building institutional capacity that we desperately need. We know is going to be vital for our short, medium, and long-term future. The summary, point one, the current TA salary is not competitive locally or regionally. Miranda Fisher has performed up to what we believe are exceptional standards. Point three, in earning her doctorate, Fisher has achieved significant milestone in her professional development. The benefits of the town probably ruined her weekends for years, but we really appreciate your doing that. The things you've learned, you've been able to put into effect, and we're benefiting from that already. Point four, retaining Fisher in her current administration is in the best interests of Netherlands residents and businesses. Our conclusion is, considering all these factors, the salary adjustment is for the town administrator, Miranda Fisher's proposed as the first step in working towards a long-term staffing sustainability and excellence for the town. To that end, we propose increasing the salary 27,256.82, bringing it up to an even $110,000. We further propose, if such an increase is agreeable to the board, that the amended town administrator contract be brought back to the next regular meeting on May 16th on the consent agenda. And I guess this one will be labeled Amendment 3. So the question before the board, three of them. Does the board agree with the amount of the proposed increase in compensation for the town administrator? Second question, does the board wish to direct town staff to implement this increase by amending the town administrator's contract? And question three, does the board wish to include the amended contract on the consent agenda at the next regular meeting on May 16th?
Thanks, Tom. Before we go to your clarifying questions, Eric, anything to add?
Only to reinforce that from the position of a board that is supposed to manage the town administrator, I think that we are put in a strange position, and I think it's an untenable position when we have a high-performing employee who is being underpaid according to the very real numbers that we have on market data in the region for what folks in similar positions are being paid. And so I think that it actually puts us in a bad management position. It makes it difficult to manage our employee effectively when we know that they are not being compensated appropriately. And so I think, to me, that is fundamentally the main factor. I think that Miranda makes it very easy because she has performed to a high standard and she has continued to develop her own career from a professional standpoint. But fundamentally, it wouldn't matter who the town administrator is in the current circumstance that we're in. A new board could be elected next April and hire their own town administrator, and they would need to be doing it at a competitive salary level in order to get the best person for the job. So this is something that we need to do one way or the other. And I think that Miranda makes it really easy because she's done such fantastic work.
Agreed. I sat down anecdotally last week with 5 other mayors and talked with them about their administrators, what they pay them, what they're expected to do, how they're performing, and we're just damn lucky. I'm just super impressed. Thank you, Miranda.
Thanks, Miranda. So let's have clarifying questions specifically now, and then we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back for more discussion and comments. But clarifying questions for Tom or Eric?
Is there any, this is Tanya, is there any commitment with this raise from the town administrator to stay for a certain amount of time, or is
It's
this
an
just?
at-will state, so I don't think my
What?
take on that is, why would we do that?
It's a question. It's a question. I'm just asking for an answer. That's your answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, my answer is it's an at-will state, so no one has to commit to anything. And I don't personally, I don't see an advantage to it. It's if someone's internally motivated to do something, they'll choose to do it. Any other clarifying questions? That being, why don't we go to public comment and hear what folks out there have to say on this discussion item?
Chris Larson has his hand up.
Hey, Chris, go ahead.
Evening, Mayor Billy and Board of Trustees. I can't tell you how excited I am that we're tackling this. We tackled the question of salaries in the town of Nederland years ago, and due to budgetary constraints at the time, we were restricted to really focusing on the lowest end of the administration. We couldn't do the executive rates, and I know we've fallen behind on that. So I'm so happy to see that this Board of Trustees is tackling really the greatest need, which is the town administrator position. I have been pretty fortunate. I have worked with, I believe, every town administrator in Nederland this century. 3 of them very closely, the last 3. And, I could go on for well more than my 3 minutes about why Miranda, or maybe I should refer to Dr. Fisher, is deserving of this kind of raise. But, the comments from Mayor Pro Tem Mawald and from Trustee Coombs Ismail really captured it. Miranda got us through a lot of hard times, crises, but also through so many things that aren't seen by the public. So much of what the town administrator does is out of the sight of the public. The day-to-day operations of town staff, of dealing with crises that never make it into the Mountaineer. And Miranda has handled those so incredibly. I can't speak more favorably of giving her this raise. But as Trustee Coombs Ismail said, even if this were not Miranda, if this was any town administrator, or we were looking at hiring a new town administrator, this is necessary. We ask a lot of our town administrator. We ask them to really push the boundaries of what a town our size can do. And if we want to keep doing that, then we need to pay somebody a wage that is commensurate with the skills we ask for, the knowledge and the dedication that Miranda's all shown. And we hope, whomever succeeds her in another 15, 20 years will do the same. It's a very tough position. I mean, the town administrator gets blamed for a lot of things outside their control. I think it's probably the number, well, I'd say number 2 lightning rod right after mayor for all the things that people don't like in the world. But Miranda handles the public with aplomb. She works with the town Board of Trustees and with our external partners so well that this is overdue, and like I said, I can't speak more favorably for this Board of Trustees doing so. And thank you to Tom, to Eric for pushing this, and for the Board of Trustees for considering this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Any other public comments?
Kathleen Chipai.
Kathleen?
Kathleen Chipai. I dispute the amount of the raise, which is a 33% increase in pay, and the actual starting pay for Colorado school teachers. I dispute this being added to the next consent agenda. I dispute the Ames claim that Fisher is setting an exceptional standard, as it has not been my experience since she became clerk in 2019. I am currently experiencing core request violations and gaslighting in real time by the admin since January. I had to take a break from the utter nonsense of her emails and handling of my chorus instead of the clerk, who is the keeper of record. But since this is being considered for the consent agenda at next meeting, it seems Fisher will be getting her raise no matter the public comment or lack of successes for the town residents or businesses. What challenges and successes other than being admin through the third year of a pandemic that only the White House acknowledged still existed, and hiring staff that admittedly have little to no experience at their jobs merit a 33% increase of pay? Some of the reasons I don't think the admin should receive a raise at this point in time are, as clerk, assistant admin, and admin, she has misinterpreted and misrepresented the code language dozens of times. She does not enforce the code fairly or equally and has violated her oath to uphold the code and the state and federal constitutions dozens of times in public record. Now that Fisher has received a doctorate, I have a hard time believing the problems and discrepancies I've experienced and witnessed are occurring based on ignorance. Her unequal enforcement and misrepresentations of code have created hardships both financially and emotionally for dozens and dozens of residents, resulting in town staff and BOT's wasted time and residents' money spent repealing and replacing code that isn't necessary had the language simply been interpreted correctly and enforced equally. From refusing to reissue my business license upon payment and per the code, and essentially closing my business down for 6 months in 2020, to violating my right to make a living and my use rights, to Gershio Field not being repaired with the grant money we could lose if not implemented, to requiring Ron to get an SRU for outdoor sales for paid parking and not requiring the same of the farmers market, to telling one neighbor they can build an 8-foot fence and the other that they can't, to reinterpreting election language, not filling open seats in an election and causing a lawsuit, to the current proposed fence ordinance language, to the formation of a subcommittee in consideration of repealing and replacing all the pet and animal language based on literally no unlawful activity, to a resolution being added to the Muni Code as if it's an ordinance and changes or impacts the parking language, to the loss of a legacy festival and the failure of Netter Days to bring locals out to spend money in businesses. For all these reasons, I think it would be sensible to hold off on a pay raise and to work on accountability to some successes. As the clerk, she started out
Thanks, Kathleen. I
hijacking
think we're at the 3 minutes.
recall election. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here for questions.
Any questions? Any other public comments? Any hands up? I can't see all the
No.
attendees. Okay. All right. Thank you for the public comments, and we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Next steps.
One thing I'd just like to bring up is the idea of a more thorough, rigorous, formal evaluation of the town administrator position, which is something that we will do this year within the next few months. We are currently working on it with, I think, a trustee subcommittee, I think is the way that we're approaching it. I mean,
just very trusty.
Just
one person subcommittee.
Just trying to be accurate as much as possible. But frankly, from my perspective, I felt that that kind of a formal evaluation now for an employee who is not being paid at market rate would be tainted with that fact. And if we do the evaluation after we correct the discrepancy in compensation, then we'll be in a good place to hold our town administrator to a very, very high standard based on being compensated appropriately and what we know we need for the town, rather than being in a position where we are evaluating an employee that we all know is not being compensated fairly. So to me, this puts us on a path to achieving more accountability rather than less, and gets us to where we need to be in terms of leadership in town staff, which I hope sends a message to the rest of town staff that we are looking at them and that we understand that they are also struggling, and that we are finding ways to lessen those burdens and make Nederland a great place to work.
Yeah. And something regarding the evaluation, because I wanted to clarify, because it was suggested in a letter that we received that this needs to be coupled with some sort of evaluation. The reality is Miranda's contract already states that she'll go through an evaluative process. So again, that is something that is already in place. It is, as Trustee Coombs and Smile said, we're looking at the evaluation form to provide more rigor and actually just help bat down what often comes up with the follies of a performance evaluation, and making sure that it goes through that process as well, that rigor, so that humans filling it out do good human things when they fill out the performance review. So, but want the public to realize that that process is already contracted as a part of her contract.
Thanks, Nicole. Any other comments from me?
I actually have a couple of other comments just based off the letter that we received. I want to address a couple of things, so I want to correct it for the record. One of the comments was a quote, "However, there is a growing trend for the BOT to look at the administrator and indeed the town attorney for guidance on issues when it is more appropriate for the town to direct the administrator into making proper and timely decisions." I'd really like to clarify that. As Trustee Coombs and Smile said, we look at ourselves as managing this position. We are, in a sense, if you will, bosses. And any good boss-employee relationship is a partnership. There is a back and forth. It is a two-way dynamic relationship. It is not necessarily always just one or the other. Yes, we have direction. We provide direction over the town administrator, but just as much, she should be able to give us direction and insight and guidance. And so that is something that I think is important to articulate that was written into that letter. Another thing I'd like to pull out is there was a quote, "The 3-mile plan based on a non-existent new comp plan is downright illegal under our town code." I'm sorry, I have looked and there is nowhere that suggests that while most municipalities will pair their comp plan with their 3-mile plan, it is not required by law. And in fact, I'd like to set straight for the record that Colorado State Statute 31-12-105 says that prior to completion of any annexation within the 3-mile area, the municipality shall have in place a plan for that area that generally describes such 3-mile plan and shall be updated at least once annually. So I think it's important that the process of going through a 3-mile plan is articulated in state statute as having to be revisited each year. So if anything, the person who wrote in this letter is acknowledging that Miranda is doing her job and making sure that we are revisiting that on an annual basis. And so, those are just a few things that I wanted to point out, things that I just wanted to set correctly for, and, Peter going through doing the portal is actually something that was suggested by Envision 2030 folks on the Public Engagement Committee. And understand from this person who wrote the letter that it is an issue of being able to work in town hall when you're looking at documents. Understood. And I think that the town administrator, Miranda, is willing to look into that. But again, I just wanted to set some things straight from that letter we received.
Thanks for doing that.
Yes, thank you very much. And there, what comments?
No, that was great, and I think that we addressed a couple of the comments and concerns that are out in the community. But I'm also a hard numbers guy, and to me, this is a pretty cut and dry sort of conversation. I did a little bit of research myself, and I looked at the town of Gunnison and the town of Crested Butte. And in 2018, the town of Gunnison was offering a salary baseline of 148,000. And Crested Butte is quite a bit higher with a bunch of perks like a town car and free place to stay, like a crash pad.
Oh, don't be
Actually,
giving
pretty
her
nice.
any ideas now. No, don't be giving her any ideas.
We've got a green tractor.
But well, but the numbers speak for themselves. And I mean, I lived in Gunnison for 5 years while I went to school, and I almost died like a billion times of frostbite. So if a hard town like Gunnison can come up with that much money, I think it's pretty cut and dry that we need to step up as well. So for me, I mean, the numbers just speak for themselves.
Thanks, John. Tanya and Jesse?
Well, I mean, I'd be the only voice of dissent here, and I know it, but I'm just going to do it. I mean, of course, Dr. Fisher deserves a raise, and I was preferring a smaller one of about 15% with the bonus until we got the compensation study and we're able to compensate the rest of town staff that is also grossly underpaid. So I'm just really confused about the big rush we're having on this. It sounds it's being pushed almost like an emergency. And I realize that Dr. Fisher has been looking at other towns that do pay more, like Gunnison and towns that were just not, unfortunately, financially as stable. So I mean, I feel like we're rushing. We don't have any evaluation from staff. We don't have the compensation study. We don't have a financial report from Rita as to, is this sustainable? Can we put this in our actual budget next year? Can we also give the rest of town staff who are also completely underpaid similar market rate raise as we should? You know, Chris Larson said we didn't do it in the past because we couldn't afford it, and we're still in that same position. I know we're just gonna steal from Peter to pay for Paul, as they say, and so I'm really thinking we need to reevaluate the community outreach position if we're going to be doing this, because I don't think this is a necessity. This community outreach position certainly never needed it before. I know he's not fully transitioned into it yet, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of community outreach happening out of it since it got approved March 7th. And I know I'm just the only one here, so I'm just putting my opinion. I know this will pass, and I think that's great. I think we should be paying everybody a lot more. I wish we had more revenue. So I know next year's budget, we're going to have to really cut somewhere else to support our staff, and that's fine. But just remember that, because we are already in the, you know, we're not a balanced budget right now. Our lawyer fees are pretty high. They're already out of budget, about to be. So that's just the reality. I'm sorry to be the Debbie Downer here. We're not Crested Butte. I wish we were. I wish I lived there too. But I don't, and we don't have that kind of money. But I do agree. The one thing we do agree on is that we do need to compensate staff more. I don't even know why we bothered with this compensation study. Because we're like really rushing. I feel like a panic. I'm getting panic from staff and from the rest of my members about this. That if we don't do it, we're going to lose our town administrator, and I don't want to do that. But at the same time, I don't like being put in this kind of position. So that's just me. I know it's going to pass, and I think she deserves it. I'm not saying she doesn't. Everyone deserves more money. Everyone wants to get paid more. We all have valuable work that we give to our community. Just would love to hear from our town accountant about it, you know, especially since I'm going to be pushing that everybody gets a big raise like this. If, you know, everybody deserves it in this town.
Board accepted.
Thanks, Tanya. And, you know, I definitely want to note the fact that we are unanimous in wanting to work to keep Miranda or compensate Miranda for her good work and to raise her pay. I think we were all unanimous there, even if the numbers aren't the same. So I appreciate that. And I just want to, my other thought, I just wanted to clarify something. I know I kind of cut you off earlier, but Colorado is an at-will state, so I feel like any kind of contract thing is really, well, probably, illegal, or at least easy to ignore legally. And then, it just, again, comes back to internal motivation. Does someone want to stay here? So, and obviously, money is important, and I appreciate that you agree with us that, a pay raise is appropriate in its time, even if it's a different amount. Jesse?
I'm in support of the raise, and thank you for doing the work that you've done, Tom and Eric, and for everything that's been said. Thank you, Miranda, for all your hard work. And I've watched you work through a lot of really challenging scenarios with the town just since you've taken the role, and from a lot of turnover and just keeping really good, cool head on your shoulders throughout a lot of different challenging management and leadership circumstances that have occurred since you've been in the role. And so I just want to say I really appreciate your service to the town, and I do feel that it's incumbent upon us to be a competitive employer, as Eric has mentioned, and I'm supportive of the proposal that Tom and Eric, you guys have put forward. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Jesse. Tom, you have any?
No, I just want to say a big thank you, and congratulations, well deserved. I've never seen somebody work this hard, make it fun to do so, motivate a great team, hold things together when the rest of us are freaking out. Miranda takes a chill pill and gets on with it, and that's super admirable. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good points. And thanks, Miranda, for all the work you do. And you are really you are a great resource for us and all the work that you do. But even for us as trustees, as we have questions, you are, you can help us. You either know the answer or can help us find it, or answer it ourselves. But appreciate the work that you do. And I also feel like this as we are working on the compensation study, this compensation for you, this action by us will, I think, show the rest of the staff that we do intend to invest in all of our staff here at Nederland. So I for one agree to the amount proposed, wish to direct Jennifer to implement this increase by amending the contract, and wish to include the amended contract in the consent agenda in 2 weeks.
Nod.
We have some nods. Thank you. 5 nods and a thumbs up. And again, just want to point out the fact that we are all unanimous in wanting to compensate you more, Miranda, and you do.
Well, I'm not unanimous 100% like you guys. Just
Nope,
FYI
but-
for the record.
But just not to
More,
the
but
same
not this amount.
Correct. I was trying to give you a little credit for the fact that you are actually trying to, that
Really,
you
I don't need
do
any credit. I just
recognize
you
what
don't have to
she
give me credit.
brings to the table. But yeah, I'll also recognize that you don't agree with 110,000. But thank you, Miranda, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.
We are done with the discussion items. There are 2 quick, very quick other business items. Miranda, did you have one?
Yep. So on Monday, you have your dinner with the county commissioners. You all gave an incredible list and it freaked them out because they only want to meet for 90 minutes. And there's not enough time to get through everything you picked my way. And so we really need to whittle it down. And I'm happy to just do kind of a quick run through of what I sent to them. So what I have on the list from what you all share with me is the IGA. We obviously already started that conversation, but there was some desire to maybe keep it going and talk about how it could benefit Nederland. Annexation and really just understanding what Boulder County's concerns are with regards to maybe environmental impacts or traffic. Water rights, they don't really have a lot of authority over that, but perhaps a discussion about a potential water reservoir on their land. Affordable housing, mental health issues and resources, wildfire mitigation and how to access those sales tax funds. Trail connectivity, including a bike path to connect between Boulder County open space and Nederland. Consideration of a recreation district. Other ideas for parking and tourist shuttles, specifically to kind of Hesse Trailhead. Parking at Eldora, the sidewalk to the high school, and then fire safety. So obviously a lot, and they really need us to whittle this down to like the top 2 or 3.
Two or three, that's
The
slow talking for 90 minutes.
Well, they have their own, I mean, they have their own list, as you saw. They'd like to bring their list of 2 or 3, and then we have a list of 2 or 3 for about 6 total.
What is a recreational district?
And do they have any overlap with our list?
Yeah.
So their list, they don't have really much. Theirs is the Hesse shuttles. There is that overlap. Nederland Community Center, but I don't know what that is about, so I have a call with her tomorrow. The Nederland Eco Pass District, and then talking the benefits of like all the electric programming that's out there.
That's interesting because I was gonna send Nederland Community Center over to you and decided not to, as feeling like it might be a step too far. But apparently they want to talk about it.
Well, you had brought it up as something for me to ask Claire about, and I did, and I think so I guess if she's bringing it back around.
Yeah, I would love to talk about the community center. I feel like they should really kick in. It could be like a Boulder County community center. But what is a recreational district?
Trustee Severs, do you want to jump into that, or would you like?
That is an idea that Nikki Dunn brought up to me while we were in Bentonville around the notion that, we can have a more comprehensive district that is prioritizing recreation in the area that would service, not just Nederland, but also Ridge Road, for example, Cold Springs, some of the outlying communities, and a potential source of revenue through sales taxes that we could use to spend on parks and rec and trail assets, for example. And knowing that the larger community, kind of similar to a library district, benefits from use of Nederland and Nederland investing in trails in the area, for example.
So it's another tax, basically.
Yeah, or an allocation of an existing tax, perhaps. And so that's where it would be an IGA with Boulder County.
I like the idea of it. I don't really want any more taxes, but I like.
Well, it wouldn't
the
be
idea of
for
maybe
you
dumping it.
necessarily, Tanya, because you live in town, but it would be for
No, I know.
for
but I mean,
residents in county.
I'm not talking about me. I never talk about just me. I'm talking about in general.
Well, I'm just it wouldn't be more taxes for people in Nederland, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, what I wanted to talk to Claire about was more recreational opportunities that we could cooperate on, and helping us create things in Nederland that would marry with some things they have down there. So I'm not against the idea, and I would put a vote for talking about that.
Yeah, and that's me jumping to a solution versus where you're coming from is more let's talk about the topic, and I kind of like your approach more rather than me jumping into already throwing a solution out there that's a solution to a problem that might not even be real, or a desire that might not be real. Whereas if we just bring up the topic as a discussion point, as you've suggested first, then maybe the recreation district is a solution that we could bring up. So
yeah,
I'd be in favor of kind of Maybe we
Okay.
broaden it a little bit to just say, talking about recreational opportunities in the area, or how we could collaborate with the county on that, because, you know, as Eric has said, to the idea of us being a town within a park, you know, if we're going to achieve that, we really want to leverage Boulder County open space and recognize that we have that opportunity to be a town within a park, and that's really our competitive advantage. You know, it's
Yeah.
like with real
So we
estate,
need
it's
to
location.
trademark that.
Yeah, we need to trademark that, and I want to build it into our brand and our reinventing tourism concept as well.
Yeah, I like that. And also the idea of the trail connectivity to Boulder. So many communities like in the Summit County are all connected by trail. And I'm not talking about a paved trail like they have, but I think that's really important that we
Me
can be
too.
connected to Boulder with a trail. That is not like you have to be in a secret society to know the way, you know?
Yep, I agree.
So I'll let other people talk, but I'm with you on recreational ideas. So
Our task now, though, is that we have to give Miranda 2 or maximum 3.
3.
So, but one suggestion is this, IGA is something we're gonna have to do. Fold that into the
That's what I was-
structure, make
I was gonna
sub
say,
bullets.
every single one of these things fits into the
We
IGA.
could just talk about the IGA and all 17 things they'll be in.
Well, IGA is just like, we can't say IGA is anything. IGA is just an agreement. It's just
But,
a
yeah,
contract.
but we
Like,
decide what we're agreeing on. That's-
yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, IGA unto itself is not a topic.
It's probably
It's the topic.
the topic, actually.
Well, it's the purpose of us having a relationship with the county, but an IGA, like, we already have an IGA with the sheriff's department. I'm just saying, it's just saying we're going to talk about an IGA. That's not a topic.
No, it could be IGA with 6 or 7 bullets under it,
Yes.
of which recreation district is definitely one.
The rec district trail connectivity that they're intertwined potentially.
Are we, if we have to direct Miranda to get something back to them. I think IGA.
Well, Tanya and I said we're super in favor of the recreational discussion. What do you guys think?
Keep it separate though from an IGA.
I don't think, I mean, to me, it seems wiser to fold that one in and talk about things like wildfire mitigation. I mean, I think water rights, we probably don't need to because they don't really have much to offer there. So we could scratch water rights because it's not really something they have much to offer. But the IGA, it just could be more of a comprehensive conversation about what are the things that we can work together on, and the rec district is part of that, you know, and as is trail connectivity. And I think the wildfire mitigation seems like a wise one because there's actually money that we can get. So I think we need to talk to them and learn more about, you know, what that will entail.
One other sub IGA item. I went down to the consortium of cities last week. The whole thing was focused on mental health and mental health resources. And as a county, we believe strongly that that's a top priority. That's the overhang that's been ignored. So there's a lot of resources coming in. The commissioners are putting a lot more money into it. So far, what we've got up here is a nonprofit that's Mental Health Partners that's tied into Clinica, which is doing pretty good for the Medicaid community. But I think there's a general mental health resources discussion to be had because they're beefing up and we're entitled to a portion of it. And we need it.
Maybe even especially
Agreed.
tied to youth in the mountains,
Mhm.
which I think could be extremely important. At least my few meetings with the Mountain Youth Coalition so far have been very mental health focused.
In mine with the elders, we have the same thing.
There you go.
And yes, that's right. So like even intertwining rec district with all that, because I mean, there's that's a potential solution, you know, or one of the things at least we have. One of the things that we already have without doing anything is recreational opportunities, but a rec district can direct that and, you know, affect.
I
mental
like
health
the idea of
issues.
mental health, but is there a pinpoint to it? Because that's just really broad. Are we, you know, like,
No,
we have.
they've got a program that's well underway. They're staffing up inside of Boulder County Mental Health with a lot of federal money for new initiatives. if we bring it up, they'll share with you
Okay.
what it is. And I just want to get on the docket, make sure we don't miss it, because
I
God
would
knows
support you on
we
that.
need more. Yeah.
I mean, I really would like to mention what I think are a couple of obvious quality of life improvements up here. One being a sidewalk to the high school.
Thank
the
you.
Other
Yes.
the other being parking, summer parking at Eldora. Like if we could get those two things, it would be transformative, really. And they're so simple and small. I feel like we should bring them up.
Mhm.
When you say summer parking at Eldora, you mean town of Eldora, or what do you mean?
No, at the ski resort.
Outdoor resort. I'd
Oh.
totally
Is that a
agree with
count?
that.
Is that
Like
a
to be able,
county?
that's a Forest Service
That's
thing,
that's
isn't
a
it?
federal
It's a county. There's a county. One of the major restrictions is from the county.
It's from the county.
Yeah.
Oh.
Eldora wants to renegotiate
I
that,
didn't
as
know
far
that.
as I understand it.
Yeah, I would love
Yeah.
to have summer recreation up there.
Me too.
So yeah, I'm with you on that sidewalk. I was gonna email Miranda about that, never did. So thanks for reminding me, because that every day I'd pick up Leo, I'm like, this is ridiculous.
It's such an obvious thing to do. I mean,
So easy.
we need a sidewalk to the high school.
Financial, like compare, like look at, you go to Boulder and they have those amazing bike paths everywhere connecting everything, and we can't have one at the high school.
Miranda, you have what you need?
IGA. IGA.
Well, and maybe it's recreational opportunities.
But maybe that's the way we talk about it for 90 minutes. I'm not saying we're like signing freaking IGAs on Monday. We're just we're just talking about what we can get to, and I think we can prioritize this IGA as the overarching thing, but like mental health, wildfire, well, which I threw out, no one else backed up, but mental health, wildfire, seeing thumbs up,
Trails.
and trails, connectivity, rec district. I mean, I think it's,
There's your 120 minutes.
yes.
All right.
90 minutes. We had.
They're gonna want to stay longer.
Can we make a motion to adjourn now?
No, I have a very quick. Did you have something else on that?
Just a real quick thing. So in the conversation that we did have about the IGA, part of it is being postponed until we have our comprehensive plan, because once we have the comprehensive plan, we'll really be able to ask. But in the interim, keeping the conversations going, bouncing ideas off. But ultimately, we want to get to that comp plan. It's just a little piece to clarify out there.
Deal.
Sounds good. So this is just, I got a text from a friend who's a local businessman, Joe Ryan, Peak to Peak Plumbing. He wants to sponsor, he's told me about this for the last year or two, music series in Chipeta Park, if that'd be possible. And, it's something he's wanted to do. And I did talk to Miranda, and, we'll put him in touch with Nikki Dunn. She's gone for
And
vacation.
DDA.
And DDA.
And DDA.
And
Great.
me, because I want to do that too, but I can't do the heavy lifting.
Right.
and
Well,
I just don't have
he's offering money.
money. Okay,
and-
money's good. Money,
well, plumbing-
DDA has money. Okay.
Except it was going to be mid-June, so I had to fix it myself. That's another story.
Right. But he should
So
come.
yeah,
and
he
do
he would like to sponsor it, and he's talked about that, and I think he probably would network with other local business folks too. But for him, it's a big thing to just have something fun. Probably non-alcoholic is important. It's just something family oriented. But I'm not getting too many details. But it's just he's floating it out there. He's willing to sponsor it, and I think DDA would be great as well. And set him up with Nikki, and then just let.
I mean, who's going to
Nikki
book
really
the
has to
bands?
take it
Who's
from
going
there.
to set up the stage? What kind of stage? Like the logistics part. So yeah, set him up with Nikki. Yeah.
I've got one last, in the time we've got other business. I took up a new hobby over the last few weeks. That's going down to the state legislature to watch the sausage being made.
Oh.
And two things. I watched, I think 213 is quite dead. I watched it die in committee several times and testified against it. And those of you who haven't opened your property tax assessment yet, please do. You're in for a surprise. Our two parcels went up 26% and 57% respectively. The political pressure, they're feeling it in Denver. There's a new bill that was just introduced yesterday called 303 that's going to try and turn some of that, basically take it out of your left pocket and put it back in your right pocket, at least half of the, or part of the increase. Senator Chris Hansen is sponsoring it. Keep an eye out. But that's how I spent several days over the last couple of weeks.
But again, to clarify, that won't impact anytime this year.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
could
like
turn
next
into
year.
a referendum in November.
Okay, so a referendum in November.
Oh, really? Okay, because when we were, I didn't know it was potentially going to happen this year.
Yeah.
So it could
Chris,
happen.
I talked with Senator Hansen. He said they're
Cool.
They're pushing ahead.
That'd be rad.
The legislature ends this week, and I'll go back to what I used to do.
Any idea where all that extra money is going to go?
It really is it's not like the state asked for it. It's just that our houses went up so much. The mill rate stayed the same. The assessments are now much closer to market rate, probably 80% of market rate. So it's a whopper. Across the state, it's 33% is
So
the
the
increase.
state's going to have a ton more money.
Yeah,
to
and Tabor
spend it.
kicks in, or Tabor doesn't kick in on this one. So it's the Genesis is the end of the Gallagher Amendment.
Yeah.
So it's shifting it back to residential from commercial. But they politically, they understand, they're feeling the heat really strongly. But I guess we're out of time, aren't we?
Yes.
All right. Any
I
other?
move to adjourn.
Oh,
A second.
Macy.
Okay. Mayor Billy.
Wait, discussion? There's a motion in a second.
not.
All right, Macy.
Mayor Billy.
Yes.
Trustee Mountain.
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
Trustee Sterling.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone.
Yes.
Trustee Severs.
I want to say a big thank you to the staff for everything they've done since we last spoke, and I vote yes.
Thanks, Jesse.
And Trustee Coombs says no.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And the meeting is adjourned at 9:59 p.m.
Good night, all.
Thanks, Macy.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Macy.